Hello there. So today I'm going to be looking at my entire vintage computer collection, which I started in about 2013. And the idea was that I was going to collect everything that I owned back in the day, roughly in the order that I had them, up to a certain point. So my first computer was a ZX81, then I had a Spectrum 48, plus 2, and then beyond that up to, say, the ST. So I started doing that, as I say, in 2013, and over the years I started to accumulate more and more computers. But I don't really have the space for them in this room, so the majority of them are in the loft. And they come out of the loft, they get about 3 to 4 weeks maybe, set up on the desk here. I'll use them, I'll play with them, and then it'll go away and the next one will come out, and I cycle around them all. So I was going to just present these computers that I own roughly in date order, the date that they emerged onto the market. So the first up I have is the ZX80, which came out in 1980, of course. I happen to have two of these. Now, the box is not original. I believe that they were shipping boxes, not shipping boxes, you know, the cardboard boxes, brown mailers, I think they're called. And I picked up these boxes from Console Boxes, who does reproduction boxes for a whole variety of systems. One of my ZX80s has the polys, and one of them only had half the polys. So I ordered a set of polys from Console Box as well. So it's a pretty nice box, actually. I mean, the main purpose of it is to keep the computer safe. It is stored nicely. It's not going to get damaged, but it's just nice to have a box. A lot of my computers don't have boxes, to be honest. The Archimedes and such don't have any boxes. So this is the one with the original polys, with the old yellow sellotape. Just a handy hint there saying top front. I didn't write that. Open this up, and what do you have? Quite a yellowed. It's actually yellower in person. I did go through a phase of peroxiding machines. I don't know if that's in the way of the camera, actually, it's in the way of the camera. I did go through a phase of peroxiding machines, and it soon became clear, well, not soon, but after about 4 years, it became clear that the yellowing returns, but with a vengeance. And because the peroxide is actually damaging the plastic, it's also damaging the things that inhibit the yellowing as well. So yellowing will return, and there's not much you can do about it. I mean, it's light or it's heat, and that yellowing will return. Let's get that out of the way. So yeah, we have the original manual here in this one. Oh yeah, that smells good. And we have the original power supply, which I'm not going to get out because the it's wedged firmly into the poly there. And this is a fully working example. We can see what the original colour was anyway there. So I didn't really have a solution to connecting this to a TV because I don't have any old CRTs. And I did a video previously on this where I bought one of Paul Farrow's Chroma 80s, which basically gives you a RGB output, and you can then just use a SCART cable, and it gives you a pretty good video out. So now I've got a solution for this. These come out more often. So yeah, that's that one. And the second one probably looks exactly the same. Not sure what its yellowness factor is. Good box this though. Okay, that's number one. Number two feels lighter. I'm thinking there's probably something missing from this one, maybe maybe a manual, can't remember. So it's good to get these out, open them up, remind myself what's there. So yeah, these are the polys from console box, and they're a much less dense poly, much more brittle and basic in terms of the shape and so on. So you've got to be a bit more careful when you're lifting it off because it is a very lightweight polystyrene. And again, we have a fairly yellowed, really actually quite yellowed, and the poly, bits of poly have come off all over it. Actually, this one does feel different. I'm not sure. The original ones, I think the early ones were vacuum formed and had kind of that yogurt pot feel, and I think this one may be one of those actually. I've never really... This is the one that I've not really done much with. The other one's kind of my daily driver in ZX80 terms. But yeah, this is really quite yellow. Usual tiny cracks here, which you get a lot on these computers. Yeah, and no manual, which is why this one is much lighter. So I'll probably have to see if I can source a manual somewhere for this one to make it more complete. Bits of poly flying everywhere. Okay, that's that one. And then, as I mentioned, the Chroma 80, which I demonstrated in a previous video. This connects to the expansion connector of the ZX80 here. Provides you with a pass-through SCART output for RGB, which you can then pass into a OSSC or some other kind of converter. Serial in here, and a joystick port here, and a ROM cartridge port here, for which I have this ZXC4, also from Portfolio, which you can just transfer games onto using a serial port. And with the Chroma, I also got this Rock Crush 80 game here. Also, because the memory on the ZX81 isn't exactly expansive, I have this RAM pack, which isn't one of the white ones. I would like one of the early white ones, which I think upgraded you to 4 kilobytes of memory. But this one is a proper ZX80 one. And they are worth a little bit more because they say ZX80 on it, as opposed to just saying ZX whatever or Sinclair. I can't remember what they say, but some of them say ZX81 and they're of course compatible. Some say something else fairly generic, but these ones seem to command more money for some reason just because they are printed with ZX80, and then the on the back there it's all specifically ZX80, so commands a higher price. So yeah, those are the ZX80s. The reason I got a ZX80 is because back in the day I had the ZX81 and I saw these things in magazines around the time and I thought, wow, that looks... I actually liked the look of this more. It just looked really interesting. And maybe it's because, you know, grass is greener and such on the other side. You want something that you don't have. I didn't realise though the deficiencies back in the day and what this couldn't do that the 81 could do. But once I'd kind of finished buying all the machines I used to own, I started looking for things of interest, and this was obviously something of interest, part of that Sinclair history, which I then continued and started buying more Sinclair machines that I didn't own back in the day. So the next computer is the first computer I ever owned, although it's not this particular one, because my original one was sold to wait for the ZX Spectrum, and this is one of the mailer boxes, as you can probably tell. Nothing really written on it apart from ZX81, I didn't write that. So yeah, nice polys with the Sinclair embossed. Now, as usual, heat, polys and wires means that the wires pick up all the gunk. So yeah, ZX81. Now, I think this is one that I composite modded. Back porch issues, not having a CRT that could take the signal. It's one of the first computers I got when I was rediscovering my roots. So I think early 2014 I got this, and I was reading up on, you know, how you can get them working on more modern displays, and I saw this kind of replacement for the RF modulator. So this one I think has been tainted, shall we say, which meant that I had to buy another one that was pure, because that's kind of the way I roll. So yeah, ZX81, when I got this back in, as I say, early 2014, I was amazed at how small it was. And I think I got mine in about 82. So I'd have been 9 years old. Smaller fingers, of course. Mum and Dad got it for us. I can't remember whether it was for Christmas or probably for Christmas for me and my brother. So we got the original. Oh God, that smell! So good. Little booklet, and I have done a video on this ZX81 before. Printer 59 1995. Yeah. It's got the original PSU, ear, mic cables, etc. So yeah, pretty nice example there. Get them on the right way, and remember to put the cables down here. So yeah, the one I modified and then regretted, but you know, it's not the end of the world, I guess. It's one thing I don't get, you know, when I'm on eBay looking for stuff, if anything says comp modded, I just avoid it like the plague. I don't want anyone fiddling around, you know. I'll make the decision as to whether I want to change it or not. Anyway, that's just me. So that's the first one in the standard mailer. And then the second one, I think there may be 3 variations of packaging for the 81. This is the sleeve. One where it's just a bit of poly and a sleeve, which gets very easily damaged. Let's have some repairs done to it anyway. I use kind of paper tape for repairs, you know, I guess it's the kind of stuff you get when you're licking envelopes, but yeah, it's just a tape, and you just add some water to it, and there's a few repairs there just to kind of stop the tearing where it has started occurring. Again, pretty nice condition for the polys, and yeah, this one isn't comp modded. And I think this may be the one I used in my video that I did several months ago. We can see who used to own it. I'll have to check up to see whether they're on any group actually. WH Smith's in Norwich. That was bought. The guarantee, free from defects. Wait. 12 months. Old booklet. The printer's dropped by £10 by this time. This is a brochure catalogue, I think, is it? Different cassettes you can buy for education, yeah. And a manual. RF leads and original power supply. So yeah, very nice. So yeah, as I say, the ZX81, first computer I ever owned. It was fantastic. Used to spend hours programming it, typing in magazine listings and such. And it was a very, very short love affair really, because You know, back in those days, newer, better models were coming out. Probably got the Spectrum after a year, so you know, it's one of those things. It kind of means a lot. There's a lot of good memories of having it, but it was just gone in no time at all. And of course, the as with the ZX80, the 1K of RAM was never enough. I have a RAM pack. I wonder if this still got the blue tack on it. I don't know. So yeah, RAM pack there. Original box, a bit ripped. I've also had to do a fair bit of repair there just to try and prevent any further ripping or rippage. And yeah, in here. Yeah, so I must have got rid of the blue tack because it was blue tacked up at one point. But I think that's because I use something else now for memory expansion. I don't use this anymore because there are better solutions out there. And the better solution, number one, is the ZXpand Plus, which allows you to load stuff off SD. And I can't remember the other capabilities of this thing. I'm assuming that's a joystick port, can't remember. And is that audio? I think maybe it supports some kind of audio. I can't remember. I've only ever used this for loading games and software off SD card. But I seem to remember the Plus adds audio, but don't quote me on that. But in conjunction with that, as well, I did a video on when I did the ZX81, is the brother or sister of the Chroma 80 that came for the ZX80, and this is the original Chroma 81, which came out many years ago. And like the Chroma 80, it has obviously a connector there, has a pass-through on the back, has some dip switches here, SCART output, serial, and in here a joystick and a ROM cartridge connector. So I think when I typically use this in my ZX81, I would connect this to this, doubling the size, doubling the footprint of the ZX81. And I think I typically use the joystick port on this one, so I just load software from this. The downside to this arrangement is that you typically do need a larger power supply for the 81. The standard one isn't necessarily powerful enough for all of these additional devices. But yeah, that really gets your ZX81 singing, dancing. Chroma, of course, also adds color capabilities. So yeah, color, sound, SD card loading, joystick support. You couldn't ever really want more, I don't think, for your 81. So yeah, that is my two ZX81s. Next up is a really big one in comparison to the things that have gone before it. I think this again is 1981. Well, let's be honest, I can't remember whether the BBC Model B came out the same time as the Model A. This is a Model B. So yeah, I guess you could call it a proper computer. So I've got some disk drives attached to it at the moment. Let's see if I can get that out. So yeah. (1981-ish), 32K of memory, as we all know. Now, I never owned one of these back in the day. No one, well, there was one person I knew in school, junior school this is, who had one of these, and I think one of their parents may have been a teacher. So the only thing I ever played on this was a game called Dogfight, I think. So I never saw the likes of Elite running on it. And I don't even recall in secondary school having these, because I think I spent a few years away from the computer lab. So in the early days, the computer lab had 380Zs and 480Zs. Well, there's one 380Z and a load of 480Zs, and there was a Spectrum and a ZX81. And then at some point, I think I just drifted away from it. We may have probably did have these at some point, but we never had them. So I never really had the opportunity to play around with one, and so I got one. And I got a 5¼ inch floppy drive, which is a big, ugly piece of metal thing. Well, the thing on the bottom anyway. Supplied by Microware, so yeah, 5¼ inch floppy drive. And I also got a Gotek, which is sitting in this case on top, with one of those SanDisk cruisers, are they? USB sticks. So yeah, this is in a master-slave configuration, I think. And typically they just kind of sit like that-ish. And this power comes from the BBC. This plugs in. I can't even remember where. It's on the back somewhere. Yeah. So we normally just sit next to it. So it gives me the authenticity of floppy drives, because I've never owned anything with a 5¼ inch floppy drive. And I think, if I remember correctly, in junior school, the first computer I ever used was Commodore PET, and that had 5¼ inch floppies. I was familiar with them, but I'd never actually gotten to play with them, so I got a load of 5¼ inch floppies from eBay, and they work, which is amazing. So I have been able to play the likes of Elite, you know, for the first time on the BBC, just to see what all the fuss was about, just to see, you know, where it all kind of started. And there's nothing really inside this that's particularly interesting. It's got the DFS in there, and I got the DFS from Retro Clinic, of course, where a lot of people get their stuff from. It's a no-brainer, really, and it's kind of amazing to look at a BBC having had such simplistic computers as the ZX81 on the Spectrum, just see how much you could actually do with it, and how it wasn't really a finished article. It actually encouraged you to open it up and to install ROMs and things, and there's so much expansion potential and second processors and such. It's like, wow, they really thought it through. Probably one of the reasons why it was most expensive and your average consumer couldn't really afford one. Once you stack this up with a Coupe monitor and floppy disk drive, the price is pretty astronomical. But you've got to say, for the time, probably the best keyboard. Great sound as well. So yeah, that is my BBC Model B. I don't have much for it, but the Gotek has been particularly useful. So next up is the classic. Needs no introduction really. This is the 48K Spectrum, and got one of these in around 1983. And this isn't my original one, because it got sold on to make way for a +2 some years down the line. Picked this one up. This is actually, on retrospect, my first computer that I bought when I started going down this path. In December 2013 I got this. It says it's a software 6-pack, but I don't think I have the 6-pack. So I'm not sure what year this 6-pack came out. Okay, so the polys are a little bit more damaged on this one. We have some chunks missing from here and here. Been a while since I've had this one out, actually, because I've been using primarily the +2. So yeah, serial numbers, I don't know what that serial number means in terms of dating the thing. Now, this one has been composite modded by me, but it's a very lightweight composite mod, and it's before the times where I just stopped, well, pretty much stopped modifying things. So I cut a wire to the RF modulator, and then I wrapped a piece of RJ45 cable to bridge the connection between the composite output and the port here. Interestingly, on this one, I've never really looked at it closely. You can see kind of a molding defect just here, where there was a port, I guess, and that looks like maybe metal's been added to the mold. I'm not sure what that should have been. So yeah, this really cemented my desire to start collecting computers again, because I think I thought I'd start with this, the one that was made the most impression on me when I was growing up. And if I liked it, I'd start collecting the others as well, and the ZX81 came shortly after. What do we have here? 12-month guarantee. No date of purchase filled in. Unfortunately, that would have helped. Notice on the discount price on the interface 1. ZX Prince has been withdrawn from production. It's a shame. So that probably dates it. I don't know when was that? 1984? Don't know. Introduction. Guess it's a bit like the quick start we did for the Spectrum Next. Software and peripherals catalog. Yeah, so January 1984. So presumably this machine is of around that time. I'm not sure I'm a fan of those joysticks, to be honest. Nice setup though, isn't it? Never had anything like that back in the day. Never had a printer. Never had an IF1 or 2. Never had micro drives. Just couldn't afford it. And then the full-on manual from when manuals were a thing and people wrote really descriptive manuals and showed you how to use a computer, which you don't get now. You just kind of switch it on, click start, and there you go. Passes the smell test. And yeah, the power ear mic. So yeah, presumably this had some games that went in here. Don't know what they were. Probably not about to start trying to collect them. And the old classic dunk that you get on these leads, the way that the polys kind of rub off. I think that's heat, isn't it? So yeah, the 48K Spectrum, which I got in about 83. First 2 games I think that we played, apart from the Horizons cover tape, was The Hobbit and Penetrator. And we had a load of C90s full of games. Probably about 18 of them, you know, by the end. So yes, we were prolific pirates back then. Now, to bring this into the modern age, I have a couple of devices. And for loading games, I started off with one of these, Div ID. It's got sellotape all around it because I have, on occasion, cracked it open, damaged it. And this doesn't actually work anymore, at least when I last tried it. It is using compact flash, and it is quite large considering. So when this broke, I got a different SD card storage solution, which is this, which is a beautiful piece of kit. Div MMC Future from The Future Was 8-bit. And I believe that this is, I've not used it much, I have used it a little bit. I use the Next mostly now, but this, I believe, auto-detects different kinds of spectrums. Whereas with the things like the Div ID, you had to move jumpers around depending on which version, you know, what kind of spectrum you had. And yeah, this has an SD card slot and a joystick port, which is very nice.
It's a very minimalistic product, no bigger or smaller than it needs to be. 2 buttons on there, I think, with one of which lights up. And then to bring the display into the future, I have a ZX HD, which I've been using across my vintage Spectrums. I have a few different models. So this is from Ben, and I kind of pronounce his surname as Versteeg. I'm not sure if that's correct. Bite Delight, but he does a whole load of amazing products for the Spectrum. It's kind of a one-stop shop, really, in taking something like this and putting it through modern displays and attaching modern storage and loading software instantly and such like, in addition to, I think, network stuff he does as well. So yeah, thanks to Ben and others in the scene for creating these wonderful devices. So a few months after the 48K Spectrum came out, a company called Grundy Business Systems released a computer called the Newbrain. And here it is. Not something that your average home user would have purchased. It was mainly used in kind of business, hospital settings and such. There were 2 main models that were released, the A and the AD. And this is the AD, the D meaning this display, which is a vacuum fluorescent display, which meant you could technically use this as a portable computer, but you only had a single line of text. Now the A model was missing this, and I happen to have one of those here as well. So yeah, AD at the top, Model A at the bottom. And as you can see here, there's just kind of a blanking plate covering where the display would be. This one is fully working here, and this one isn't working. They're quite a complex design inside. It's effectively 3 boards in a sandwich, and it's very dense. You've got a board with the memory, you've got a board with the CPU, and I can't remember what the other board was. I opened it up when I got these. They weren't working. Opened them up, and I was fairly horrified by what was inside. It was just way beyond me to try and repair. So, unsurprisingly, this one here went to Ian Gledhill, Mutant Caterpillar, which he fixed and then returned to me, but I haven't actually gone through any motions with this one. So yeah, it's quite a weighty machine. Kind of just looks really vintage because of the colour choice, you know, brown. Serials in the 300,000s here. I've only got 1 PSU for them as well. But yeah, this is all original. You have unusual power connectors and printer connectors and tape connectors as well. It's not just like an ear mic type 3.5mm jack. So yeah, the power's this 5-pin thing here, expansion connector, TV connection, monitor connection, which I think is composite. I do remember hooking this up, yeah, to my OSSC. The base OSSC takes RGB, converts to HDMI. I have an add-on for the OSSC though, which takes a composite, converts it to HDMI, and then feeds that into the top part of the OSSC, which then converts it. So yeah, these are all kind of non-standard ports here. I have, as I say, a single PSU, which is a huge ugly thing, and it stinks as well. So yeah, this is the PSU, and you could kill someone with this, you know, you could. It is so weighty, and as I say, absolutely stinks. It does have one of those paper caps in, like the BBC model, so you do have to replace that before you decide to fire it up. So yeah, only 1 PSU, and this power connector here. So yes, this one has been fired up and used, although it does need to cycle round again so I can get more into it. I had to try and make up a tape cable for this. So I bought one of these 6-pin connectors here, and then I wired it up to these here. and I can't actually remember which is which now. I thought I would have marked them somehow. They're all, yeah. One is smaller than the other. I'm not sure what they do, so yeah. And I don't really have much to test it with. So I need to find some software for it, because the other things I got with these, we've got the manual, which again has that lovely smell of old stuff. Quality manual again. Cambridge, where it all happened. Here we've got two manuals actually, one for each of these systems. Some notes written in here. I'm not sure whether this page that's been stapled in was, I assume it's, yeah, some kind of addendum. I don't think this one has that actually, the other one. No. So yeah. Maybe the name of the owner in there. Yeah, so a good quality manual. Guarantee applies to the UK only, so yeah, guarantee card, obviously not filled in and sent off. Not seeing any kind of date information on here. And then I also have a handbook for disc users. Now I don't have a disc system for this, but if I ever did get one, I would know what to do with it. Describing the differences between RAM and disc there. Ooh, 5¼ inch floppies, yes, sectors. Yeah, so this machine wasn't particularly popular. I believe they sold about 50,000 of them between 82 and 83. I think the design may have got sold on to someone else after that. Keyboard isn't bad. It's not obviously as good as the likes of the BBC, but this was a contender for the BBC Micro, you know, for the school project, along with the Spectrum, Acorn's effort obviously, which won, and this was another one. So it's a very interesting machine. And once I completed my journey of buying all the computers I used to own, I started looking for interesting things. And I remember seeing these in magazines, and I thought the name's really cool, the Newbrain. I'm going to get one and see what all the fuss is about. Unfortunately, there's not much you can actually do with it. At least, you know, it's not really a games machine. It has what could be classed as high-res graphics back in the day. Uses a Z80 processor, has 32K of RAM. I believe it was able to be upgraded quite a lot in terms of RAM. But yeah, it's just something of curiosity to me. It's part of that phase in the UK when we started to see all these innovative companies starting up, all with their own ideas of what a home computer should be, what technology should sit under it, what kind of languages it should come with, how it should interface, you know, with peripherals. So really that's the main reason why I got it. Probably not going to use it an awful lot, but I am hopeful that I do want to try and get this one working as well, so I've got two. Because working examples, I can't imagine that there are thousands of working examples of these out there, so preservation is the key. Keeping it working is important, so yeah. And finally, I have this Manuel pour débutants, so yeah, starter thing. Which of course, as you can see, is in French. Grundy House, Somerset Road. So I'm not sure whether this is just the version of the manual for the French market or what. does seem to have those kind of starter examples and such in there. And then an associated cassette, which is the only software that I have for the Newbrain. But unfortunately, when I made up that cassette cable, I tried to load this in from tape and it just wouldn't load, it just crashed partway through, which I guess you can maybe expect. So yeah, one of these days I'm going to find some software on eBay or some tapes on eBay for the Newbrain, and I'm going to fire it up again and give it another opportunity. You know, really sit down with it and actually maybe type in some magazine listings as well, because that will be interesting, and see what I can do with this vacuum display as well. Vacuum fluorescent display. So yeah, that is the Grundy Newbrain. So sticking with 1982, and a few months after the Grundy Newbrain came out, another computer came onto the market, and again there was a Sinclair link. As with the Newbrain, Sinclair people worked on this new computer via a company called Jupiter Cantab, and it is the Jupiter Ace. So this sported a Z80 processor, much like the ZX81, and it ran at 3.25 MHz. It had 1 kilobyte of RAM, and it had the rubber keys, which I guess are fairly similar to the 48K Spectrum. The case in this iteration, however, is one of those vacuum formed, like the early ZX80s. It's not a particularly sturdy case. You would not want to place heavy objects on it, and you would certainly not want to drop it. So I believe the keyboard is slightly different from the Spectrum in that each key has some kind of conductive paint on the back which forms the contact. You have a sticker on the back which basically tells you what ports do what, TV here and mic here, and then power on the other side. So there's basically not much in terms of legend on the case itself. You have to kind of turn it over to remind yourself what's what, and not to plug you know, power into the ear and mic, because I'm not really sure what would happen. You've got 2 expansion connectors on this, one that looks like a traditional ZX81 style, and this other one here which I can't remember what it does. However, it does have a video output on this one here. And this brings me to where I am up to with this computer, because I don't have a CRT capable of displaying the image of this. And so what I'm looking to do is build a composite booster. There's a simple schematic online which basically plug a connector into that and a couple of components on that board, and it will boost the composite signal sufficiently to be able to get a picture, or so I'm told. My aversion to modifying these things internally, especially with something like a Jupiter Ace, because I believe there was only maybe 5,000 of them that were sold, so I'm really reluctant to ever open this thing up. I mean, these tabs here, very much like the ZX80 back in the day, the case just doesn't feel like it would survive opening and closing a lot. So yeah, the idea is to get this board made so I can get a stable, more powerful composite signal and plug that into that. Plug that into my OSSC bit, which does the composite to RGB, not HDMI like I said in previous video. And yeah, the other thing as well, of course, is you have this sticker, which I'm surprised, really, that this sticker has survived so long. I'm not really sure whether it's plastic or just paper, but you'd think, given the dirty fingers of 42 years, would have taken these off or dirtied them, but no. Doesn't appear to be any damage, just the odd little knock and scuff mark, so it's a pretty good example of the Jupiter Ace. And the reason I got this was much for the same reason as the Grundy Newbrain, because this was yet another one of those British inventions. It has the Sinclair link, and I'm very passionate about Sinclair. People who decided maybe that Sinclair wasn't doing things the way they wanted to do them. And I guess the major differentiator with this computer is the use of fourth language instead of BASIC. So yeah, I'm waiting to get this little circuit made. I did have a go, and I've had to defer it to someone else now, and they're busy, so I'm hoping early next year I'll have that made. I'll have it fired up and I'll be able to give it a good solid go. What I have for this is Teach Yourself Fourth on the Jupiter Ace. I have no idea whether any of these tapes work. I will be testing them out, as I say, hopefully early next year. And there were some numbered tapes as well, although one is missing, and that's really annoying. Don't mind if I've got one or two of the six, I won't bother trying to hunt down the missing piece. But because I have 5 of the 6, that's a different thing altogether. So I need to find what that missing piece is. So here we go, 1, 3, 4, 5. Let's move that out of the way a bit. Yeah, so let's get the lights off that. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, number 2 didn't come with it when I acquired it. And then finally we have 5 ACE programs. Stephen Vickers, the man himself, the guy who wrote the manual. Slightly damaged cassette box there. I have original Jupiter Ace mains adapter there. That didn't work, actually. I had to do some soldering on that because dry joint had come off the board. Resoldered that, and yeah, it's all working perfectly again. Producing about 14 volts, which is about the norm, unregulated and all that. And then so that you can actually do something with the machine, I have a RAM pack. So yeah, the RAM pack instructions here. Product of Jupiter Cantab Limited, made in England. Make sure you're not switched on. Guarantee against defects in manufacture for 6 months, not even 12 months. That's terrible, that, isn't it? Nullified if the unit is opened, and then we've got that in a couple of languages. So yeah, it's the manual for the memory expansion. And then the expansion itself, much like the ZX81 I showed earlier. This looks really quite nice though. It's proper plastic, proper injection molding, and with a green connector as well. I think it looks quite nice though. It's just a shame that the computer itself isn't kind of a similar type of plastic. I don't know whether the 4000 was actually. Don't know the 4000, probably never will. So yeah, that goes in there, and then where's it go? It's a bit of a faff actually. Ah, there we go. So yeah, kind of hangs over that way a bit, doesn't it? And presumably it's just as prone to wobble as the ZX81 and Spectrums of the day, which is all fine, they're all part of that DNA. And then we have the manual. So this is an original. It's quite yellow, that front, isn't it? Pages are nice and white. So yeah, this is an original, and it is a 2nd edition manual. $89.95 for a Jupiter Ace, so it does put it in a lower price bracket to the Spectrum, which obviously this came out after. I'm not really sure what would incentivize people to pick one of these up in favour instead of a Spectrum, when the Spectrum had, either 16 or 48K, it had sound, it had colour, it had a good sturdy case. And the only differentiator, as I say, was that this had 4 built in. So yeah, maybe understandably it was too late, you know, maybe if it had come out more along the lines of the ZX81, you know, maybe it would have done better. But it's still fascinating to me because it is the part of that DNA, it's part of that history in the UK when we made really cool stuff and people could just create startup companies and make computers, and you had the likes of Dragon as well, the Oryx and things. It was just a really fascinating time. So yeah, that I think is the Jupiter Ace. So in early 1984, I think it was January, Sinclair released a computer called the QL, and this is again something that I'd never seen or used as I was growing up, and it was only really once I'd collected all the machines I owned that I started looking further afield. And I already had a bunch of Sinclairs, the 80, 81 Spectrum, and I wanted to start filling in the gaps, and the QL was an obvious choice. So here we go. Now, this is not an original box. Again, this is a box from Console Boxes. I do have the original QL box, but it's not in very good shape. So I elected instead to just flatten the original box, store it, and to keep the computer in this box. And I have not opened this one up in a long time. So sporting a 68008 processor, running at 7.5 megahertz, with 128K of RAM as standard, which could be upgraded officially to about 800 or so K in its default configuration. Oh, I'll try and get this thing out. There we go. Which way is it? Probably that way. Heavy thing. Mainly because of the manual. Okay, so yeah, we have the original polys. Should probably turn it around really. Just a bit damaged there. The more you handle the polys, the more little pieces come off. Okay, so yeah, another Rick Dickinson design. And I think it's a lovely design. It's very long. So yeah, function keys down here. Have your 2 micro drives here. I don't think there was any other method for getting data on and off this thing in terms of, you know, well, no tape support, shall we say. Serial ports, I'm not actually sure what these are. But yeah, these are kind of non-standard at the time. Ports, RGB, yeah, net. Looks similar to the interface, interface 1 in terms of how that may work, I'm not sure. I've never networked up a QL. So yeah, it's a lovely design. You have an expansion cover here, and a ROM socket here, which I've never used. Yeah, QL. I need to get it out more and use it. I've been umming and ahhing about buying the right kind of expansion for it, because there's a lot of things that people have done with the QL, from replacing the CPU, for example, with a full-blown 68000, or even going beyond that up the range of 68000s. I don't know whether there's a 68060 board available. Massive memory upgrade potential, you know, with these higher order 68,000 chips and mass storage type devices as well. I do have a V drive for this, but I've not actually got it set up yet, and I wasn't sure how to set it up. I got it from Charlie Ingley, and the next time this comes out proper, which is probably going to coincide with when the Spectrum Next has the official QL core, I'll probably learn quite a lot on the Spectrum Next, and then I'll probably pick this up again and make a decision on an upgrade, gold card or whatever. There's so many different things available. So yeah, the manual is something that Phoebus on the team never stops going on about, how this format is the best manual ever. And I can't really disagree, you know, it's easy to update. The main problem is the size and the weight, and if we were, you know, doing something similar with the Spectrum Next, it would just be cost prohibitive. It makes the box a lot larger and a hell of a lot heavier as well. But yeah, it's really good manual. I probably wasn't showing that to the camera though, just looking at it myself. I can get carried away looking at this kind of thing. Okay. So yeah, we have an original squeaky PSU, which just looks a lot like the subsequent Spectrum ones that came out. And RF cable, and I also have my SCART cable that I bought, which allows me to use the RGB retro computer shack there. I do get some of the cables from there. There's another place that I get cables from, Cool Novelties even. I've never really observed a difference in quality in terms of the end result from either manufacturer. And yeah, 2 feet as well. Not sure why, from an industrial design standpoint, they went with that approach. Obviously, other Spectrum models that came out, I guess, as a result of this, you know, in terms of creating a mold for this thing and actually having a keyboard with proper keys. They elected not to have the flip out feet, and I don't find that these don't seem to fit in that well. I don't know. It's supposed to give you a bit of elevation, I guess. I don't know whether you're supposed to have 2 of these or 3, to be honest. I've only got 2. If I'm missing one, so be it. But yeah, this came, it was working. There was only one micro drive that wasn't working, and it was just quite an obvious mechanical fix inside. We have QL chess. The usual arrangement. You have the, I guess, the original, and then you make a copy of the original, and that's the one you use. Microdrives seem to have some kind of notoriety about them. And even to this day, people say, you know, they fail quite easily, and it's not really been my experience, because all of these work. This is the pack that comes with the QL, with Quill, Abacus, Archive and Easel on from Cyan. And the only thing you have to bear in mind is the felt pads on these things, which you can't really get. I don't think my camera's going to focus particularly well on that, but yeah, the felt pads disintegrate and it can cause problems for your microdrive in future if you don't re-felt them. And that's quite a fiddly job, and probably not something I do with my shaky hands. Get someone else to do that for me. Let's put that back on there. So yeah, the QL really was just a missing piece of Sinclair history that I'd never owned, and obviously I'd seen it in magazines and probably thought, oh, that looks nice, and saw the advert, you know, of Clive jumping over all the other computers. It was targeted, you know, against the Apple Mac and the IBM PC, I guess. But I just think that, yeah, there were a number of decisions that were made which, I think, compromised its ability to fight in those particular markets. But subsequent to that, it does have a very dedicated following, and as I mentioned, a large number of upgrades are available for it, which turn it into somewhat of a powerhouse. So yeah, that is the QL, and it will be coming out more. So off the back of the QL and the industrial design work that went into that, in October 1984, we got the Spectrum Plus, which was basically identical piece of hardware to the original 48K rubber key Spectrum. This one had a proper keyboard and a reset button. Looking back, I guess it feels quite disappointing that after a few years, the Spectrum didn't really evolve in terms of the hardware. Whereas for the years preceding 1982, we went from a machine that was black and white, couldn't actually render the display and process at the same time, to a machine that could do that in black and white, to a machine with colour and sound, all in the space of a few years. But of course, Sinclair were also working on the QL, so I guess you could perhaps say that was one of the reasons why the Spectrum didn't evolve as quickly as it could have done. And I guess you could also argue the likes of the C64, you know, they were fairly static for quite a long period of time. So yeah, the Spectrum 48K Plus. Never owned one of these back in the day, but again, it was my desire to fill in the gaps, were reasonable with Sinclair, and so I picked up one of these. So basically, as I say, it's exactly the same board inside, except we have a wire that resets the processor, I guess, which is connected to this little reset switch. It does reduce the requirements to, you know, unplug and plug it in again. So yeah, it's identical. It doesn't do anything different. It does have the little fold-out feet though, which I really think would have benefited the QL from having that. Not having pieces that you can just lose, or, you know, they fall out when you move the computer. So the classic Horizons tape, which I didn't have on my other 48K that I showed. I should probably just swap this over actually and put that in there. Load side A, load side B. Many happy hours were spent going through all of the software on this. The Through the Wall, there was like a Foxes and Hair thing, biorhythms, and something where you could create your own character set and type using your own characters. And I used to do the characters from the series V, all the visitor lettering and such. So we have a user guide companion cassette, which I assume was unique to the Spectrum Plus. Gold star. Yep. And the manual has been significantly reduced. Colour-coded pages. It's still got examples in there, and I've never really compared and contrasted the differences between the original manual and this manual. Obviously, it's in full colour, so they've got a bit more money to play around with now. And it still has that smell, you know, that lovely smell of old. Ear, mic, RF, and this original PSU, which resembles quite closely the QL, although I think the QL has a bit more of a ridgy kind of effect here. So yeah, not much to say about this one. Got a bit of a break in the cable here that's been repaired. Because all the peripherals that I demonstrated with the rubber key 48K are stuff that I use on this one. So the ZXHD, for instance, and the SD card thing that I've just forgotten the name of. There you go. Brain's not working very well. So yeah, put the feet down. So once I'd finished collecting all of the Sinclairs and other computers I used to own, I went on the lookout for something else, something a bit different. I wanted something that was perhaps popular, but not in the circles I moved in, or maybe not popular in this country compared to other computers that were around at the time. So predominantly through junior school and secondary school, it was the Spectrum and Commodore 64 in the early days. One person I knew had a BBC, and one person I knew had an Auric, and another person had a Dragon 32. But in all my time in junior school and secondary school, there wasn't a single person I knew who had an Atari 8-bit. So that's what I aimed for. There were thousands of games for it. It had a very big following, but I'm just not sure the following was particularly big in the UK. Or at least maybe, I don't know, I'm from the Northwest, so you know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was popular, but I never ever saw one. No one I knew ever had one. So I researched the Atari 8-bits, and there's a couple of reasons why I settled on the 130XE. One of the reasons was that my first 16-bit computer was an Atari ST, and this has a very distinctive ST look about it. I was also looking at the various upgrades available for it, and there's quite a lot you could do with it should you choose to do it. I haven't really, but there is a potential for faster processors and faster everything in this. So yeah, the 130XE was my introduction to Atari. And it's interesting because, you know, if you look at the likes of TJ, he lived and breathed Atari, and he went on a journey into the world of Sinclair, bought Sinclair machines, and really got into that scene, something that he'd never had, you know, growing up with computers. And this is really the opposite. You know, I'm a Sinclair person through and through, and I wanted to see what was happening on the other side of the pond. So yeah, I picked up one of these. 131,072 bytes of RAM. Compatible with all Atari peripherals and 65XE and 800XL. So the reason this slots in now in 1985 is because this is when the XE came out. But obviously there was a long line of Atari 8-bits that existed prior to this. The 400, the 800, and there's a whole slew of models I can't actually remember the name of now. So yeah, and this is really bloody heavy as well. I'm not sure what's giving it all the weight. But yeah, it's really... This box isn't going to last long. Ah, yes, power supply. So yeah, in the top, you have this very chunky thing. And then the rest of it's a lot lighter actually. Should see what's in here. Let's get it the right way up as well. So yeah, we have the original plasticky stuff and the polys here. Keys are quite yellow. It's a lovely looking machine though. I really do like it. I've not really had any hands-on with the other 8-bits in the range. But this is just like a baby ST, and I like that a lot about it. It's kind of endearing. We have this couple of joystick ports here. Peripheral, let's see. Is that this SIO, I think it's called? I'm not sure what these are, to be honest. These little slots here. I must admit to some certain amount of ignorance when it comes to these things. The old RF. I assume that's power. Is that one power? Can't remember. Yes, it is. And then we have a little wire hanging out here, which I'll explain later. Or maybe even now. Maybe not. This is my mass storage device for the 130, which is from Lotharek, as you can see. It's an SIO SD, I think it's called. Yes, SIO 2 SD, sorry, version 1.3. And this allows me to shove games on SD card and load them up. I can't remember how you do it now. I think you have to press something on the keyboard when you boot, but I have made extensive notes so that when the time comes to get this out again, I will know what to do. And you know, the beauty of these devices is, as I've mentioned, I don't like modifying things internally. But you know, being able to use a native interface on the 130, and just to be able to, you know, plug something in. Now I've got a mass storage device. That is the ideal modification for me, because you're not changing any of the internals. But coming back to that cable sticking out the back, that is a modification I've made. And I can't remember the chip I had to fiddle with. I had to socket a chip, plug a board in its place, and then plug the chip on top of that. And that gives me a full-blown RGB output, which means it feeds into my OSFC, converts straight to HDMI, and gives a really great picture. So really, in terms of modification, to get that back to stock, all I have to do is take the original chip off, take the new board I plugged in off, and plug the original chip back directly into the board, and it's back to normal. The only other thing was, I think there was a audio, a wire that I had to solder to a point, and I can't remember where. It's one of the wires on this, I think, has to be soldered to a point. There's some audio port or something on the back. Very vague, I know, but it was a long time ago I did that. So yeah, this has RGB out. I have a cable to connect this somewhere. It'd probably be in the power supply box, actually. It's a bit bent and twisted. But yeah, this is bloody massive. And when you consider in the Atari ST, you know, you had a power supply here, it wasn't particularly big. But yeah, this thing, I mean, no shit Sherlock when it says do not remove cover, shock hazard, because this could probably kill you in a nanosecond, this thing. I don't know, it's just 5 to 7.5 VA, 24 watts. Yeah, it's makes up the majority of the weight of this thing. What else we got? This thing here, which is, I'm not really sure what the box in the middle is here, because I've never connected this to RF. But it is certainly, looks like an RF cable. So yeah, I'm not sure what this box does. Don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't just have a straight cable all the way through. And then the aforementioned SCART cable, which this one is from Cool Novelties, and it does a fine job. So yeah, that just connects up to here. That's a good RGB out. We have the manual, So yeah, much like the Sinclair manuals of old, all of this basic examples that you can type in. Smell test is good. So some troubleshooting steps at the back. And then I don't actually have a floppy drive for it, but I do have a floppy disk. Disk Operating System 3 version 1.1. I do have a 5¼ inch drive, I just don't know what I need to get it working, or whether I can use any 5¼ inch drive with this thing. I'm assuming, does it connect to the SIO connector, so I'd need some kind of adapter for that, or maybe some additional box to translate the signals and such. But yeah, this is a lovely computer. Serial number there. All the bumpers intact, I do like that. So yeah, before I kind of got involved with the NECs, which ate about 7 years of my life, I didn't get a chance to do anything with these, but now I do, since that's now passed. I am getting more opportunity now, so I'm really looking forward to getting back into all these computers. And I think that's all there is to say about the 130XE. It is the only Atari 8-bit I've ever owned. I've not yet been tempted to upgrade the 6502 processor in it, because there are some significant upgrades, as I mentioned, 20+ megahertz and such, and memory upgrades as well. So this is just the stock, 128K of RAM. And you do need that, I believe. You need more than the 64, I believe, for the SIO to work. And you know, one of the great things about it as well is not just discovering the old games that people like TJ play back in the day, but it's some of the new titles as well coming out. You know, someone did a proper Manic Miner for it, which is great. It plays really well, except it doesn't have the jump noise, which I do really miss, not having the jump noise. But yeah. So yeah, 130XE, 1985. So next up, we're around January 1986, and I am backfilling my Sinclair collection. And I'm doing so with a ZX Spectrum 128, which I never owned growing up. I had one friend who had one, and when I jumped into the scene, I saw that they were quite an in-demand item, and they seemed to fetch a fairly decent price, because they were the last of the Sinclair models. And they weren't in production for very long either, because I think that year, in '86, they stopped and Amstrad took over. Yeah, this is my 128. Which is upside down. So yeah, basically just a 14K Spectrum with a nice big heatsink on the side. Polys aren't too bad. So yeah, slightly different colouring there compared to the 48K Plus model. Nice 128K written there. And different port arrangements in this one. You've got an RGB output here, and your ear and mics have been relocated to down the side. And you also have an RS232, which I believe the Spanish models, no, it's not the Spanish models, is it? I'm talking rubbish. The RS232 is just serial. It's this one here that I know the Spanish models had a keypad for it. So yeah, not much to say about this one really, apart from the fact that it had the improved audio and additional memory that some games took advantage of. And as I say, I got this because I had a gap in my collection, and this was quite sought after. And I got this really before the prices started really shooting up. I think it was about £160 I paid for this, all boxed. We have the PSU. So this one has the kind of the textured compared to the 48K plus one. Ear, mic, RF. We have the manual here and an introduction. Similar to the 48K one, I guess, in all of that colour coding. And then there's ZX Spectrum Plus user guide, which is that just the user guide from the 48K one? I'd have to see if there's any 128K specific examples in here, because it is using pictures from the 48K Spectrum. So a question, I guess, should the 128 have come with a different ZX Spectrum user guide, and am I actually missing it? Because that would be really annoying then, because that's something else I have to try and find. So yeah, we have the introduction, and then we have some games. Daley Thompson Super Test 128 and Never Ending Story, which is a game I never completed. Graphics by Simon Butler. I'm assuming these are meant to go in here, are they? I don't know. Not quite sure how they're meant to go. That's the thing with opening these things up. I'm trying to remember back in the day, did these things have plugs? They didn't come with plugs, did they? So I'll probably just shove them back in there again. So yeah, not got much to say because I've already demonstrated the peripherals I use, and I use the same ZX HD with this. And the SD card solution, which I've still forgotten the name of. So yeah, Spectrum 128. So towards the end of 1986, Amstrad had bought Sinclair, and they were now responsible for producing the Spectrum model. But not content just to sell the 128, they got their team together and they designed an entirely new product. Whilst internally I believe there's a lot of similarity with the 128 board, outside it's a very different thing. And finally there's a product, a Spectrum that you can buy, which is all in one. You can just go into a shop, walk out with it, and you have a complete product. There's no need to buy a cassette deck anymore, which I think was quite a positive. Now, I owned one of these back in the day. It was my step from the 48K rubber key to the 128. One day at Christmas, I unwrapped this, and I also unwrapped it with a game called Starglider, which was an amazing choice. Parents don't usually get it, they're not normally in with the scene. But I can only imagine someone in the shop knew what they were talking about and guided them towards Starglider. So that's the first game I ever played. One of the longest as well I've ever waited for a game to load, because obviously I wasn't really expecting that. But hearing the AY sound and hearing the synthesized speech just took the Spectrum for me to a whole new level. And it felt like a whole new computer. I don't really understand why, because it was the same amount of processing power, it was the same, kind of graphics, etc. But for some reason the games for it, the 128 games, just stood out. And the fact that you could get your audio through your TV, which is something I've never had before, relying on that little speaker in the Spectrum, and now I could get it full volume, to the annoyance of my parents and such. So I think the design of this is fantastic as well. It's a good, solid design. You've got an audio out here, TV, RGB, and MIDI as well, which I never used, and the expansion connector. And I believe this is one of the most compatible of the 128, similar to the 128 Plus that Sinclair did. Possibly because the board is pretty much the same board. But the keyboard on this has to be, I think, the best, in my opinion, of any Spectrum. The joystick ports on the side, as we know, are Sinclair format, so they are not an Atari standard, which is annoying, and one of the things I guess Amstrad tried to do to make their joysticks unique, so you'd have to buy their joysticks. But of course all companies did was swap some wires around and add an additional 9-pin connector. So you had the black connector for regular computers and you had the grey connector for these. Another downside, I guess, was the cassette deck. Whilst it being integrated is really handy, it meant that some of your more temperamental games, perhaps you couldn't adjust the volume on this unless I don't know if you could hack around with it to do it, but certainly being a kid back in the mid to late 80s, didn't have the brain power to work out how to do that. So yeah, games loaded at a specific level, but you did have the old azimuth screw that you could tinker with to try and get a sharper signal. Yeah, so I hate to say it, this is my favourite Spectrum model. And there are people who begrudge Amstrad really taking over from Sinclair, but when looking at the realities and how I believed things panned out, Sinclair effectively were going bankrupt. The C5, I think, was released in '85, was it? Things were going down the pan. Amstrad bought Sinclair, and instead of just flogging a dead horse and selling the existing 1-8 model, they put the time, money and resources in to creating a whole new case. And they did that with subsequent issues. Arguably, the subsequent issues went down in quality and compatibility. But when all is said and done, Amstrad solved the Spectrum longer than Sinclair did, and also sold more of them, according to the limited research that I'd done. So really, it is responsible for a lot of this vintage scene existing for the Spectrum. Bearing in mind, a lot of people didn't come to the Spectrum perhaps when it was a rubber key or a plus. Their first computer may have been an Amstrad model, in 86, 87 or whatever, through to 92 when they stopped producing them. So I think if you've kind of focused on the Sinclair years, and if that was it, if that was the end of 85 or whatever, a little bit at the beginning of 86, if that was to be the end, I don't think there'd be nearly as many people in the scene. And certainly some programmers didn't come to the scene till 86, 87. So it would have been much more diminished, I think, had Amstrad not come in. And they weren't lazy at all. They did spend money to try and push the product more. So yeah, I'm totally for it. I'm totally happy that Amstrad did that, because it continued a legacy. And to me, it's still got Sinclair written on it. So there you go. Disagree or agree with me. I don't have a box for this one. I use the same RGB cable that I use for the 1-8 Plus when I'm not using the ZX HD. And I have the original power supply. So that's it, yeah. It's the 1-8 Plus 2.
Now, I didn't have the Plus 2 for a huge amount of time, and in 1987 this was released in the UK, the Sega Mastersystem. And I consider it to be a bit of a mistake on my part, because I don't tend to like the kinds of games you get for consoles, the arcadey games, platform games, shooters and stuff like that. I much prefer the involved games, like Mercenary and Elite and that kind of thing. And I don't know why I got this. I don't know if it was the graphics. I don't even know where I saw it, maybe in a magazine. But this had pretty much the same processor as the Spectrum, running just over 3.5 megahertz. But it had 32 colours out of a palette of 64, 8K of RAM, and it had video memory as well. And it could do sprites. I think it was 64 sprites maybe. And you could tell in some of the games when you were playing things like Time Soldiers or Secret Command, when you'd gone above that sprite limit, sprites would start to flicker on and off. So yeah, I've got no idea why I bought this, but as part of my journey in rediscovering the computers I used to own, I picked up one of these and I've barely used it. So it's an original Master System, not the two, of course. I had to get the one I used to own. It has RF out and RGB out as well, which I never used back in the day. Cartridge slot, of course, two controllers, and reset and pause button. Pause buttons. Wow. And of course, this original model had the cartridge slot as well. And on the back, we see the serial number. It looks like quite a low serial number, but I know this model number here, there's lots of different variations of them. 3505 is UK PAL, I believe, and this 40H thing here denotes it was made in China around 89-90, so I guess it's quite a late one. And the reason it's come in now in 87, despite the fact that the Master System came out in 85, I think, originally, it's just because, yeah, the UK were a couple of years late on this, weren't they? And this was the competitor to the NES, which I never owned as well. And I've no idea what this thing does here. I don't even think I've ever looked at it before. You can kind of see an edge connector here. I don't know if that's because, didn't this support FM sound or something? Couldn't you plug something into this? If so, I might have to explore that. So yeah, of course, consoles were the death of innovation. They killed off the bedroom coder. You could no longer just sit and plug a keyboard into this and program it and write your own games. I believe you had to get a license from Sega and get the dev kit, and it cost a lot of money, and your games had to be of a certain quality. So all of a sudden, all that innovation, all those years of people just writing games ended, and games ended up being incredibly expensive cartridges. And this is actually a taped together cartridge. It used to have Secret Command in there, but I replaced the internals with one of those, I think they're called EverDrives, are they? This is an EverDrive for the Master System, which allows you to load games off SD card. And I got the EverDrive, I had this cartridge, and I didn't have the correct screwdriver, to dismantle it properly. So I basically ended up hacking it and breaking it, and then it would only go back together with sellotape. So yeah, can't remember how this works. I think you literally just switch on, plug in, there you go, and then use the controller to select your game. And I've got no box for this. Got the original power supply, which has been pat tested because this used to sit on a bank of desks in work many years ago with a lot of other vintage computers. We used to have Spectrums, Atari STs, Amigas, Commodores and such all set up on a big bank of desks. The original controllers, two of those, which kind of felt really good at the time, but 5 minutes of using one of these, and I don't know if it's because of my age, your thumbs are pretty dead by the end of it. So yeah, two controllers. I have the SCART cable as well for this. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a misstep because, as I mentioned, the kinds of games I like weren't the kind of games you get on a console like this. But I do remember enjoying Secret Command, and I did end up getting a light gun for it. But again, the light gun, there wasn't really much you could do with it as far as I was aware. It came with, it's not called a cartridge, is it? I can't remember what this one's called. It's a card, I guess it's just a card, which had Duck Hunt on and this kind of FBI shooting range. And then the only game I had which made use of the light gun was Rambo 3, which was basically an Operation Wolf style game. But it got old kind of fast. So the only games I really played on this were two-player cooperative games, which I really enjoyed. Secret Command being one, and Time Soldiers being the other. I had a few others as well, like Cyborg Hunter, I think it was called. And I honestly can't remember any other games that I had for it. So it does feel like a bit of a misstep, but it was kind of a transition from the Spectrum to the 16-bit world of where we're going to be coming to soon. So yeah, I don't really have much love for this, although playing Secret Command I got so good at it, I could complete it without losing a single life by the end of it. Although firing it up more recently, well I say recently, 8-9 years ago, I was absolutely hopeless at it and couldn't remember how to play it. And as mentioned, these controllers just killed my fingers after about 5 minutes, and the pain was just too great. So yeah, that's the Sega Master System. Oh, I forgot to mention actually, yeah, I've got this operating instructions, which is, yeah, it's not really much you have to know about these kinds of things. Video cassette recorder. Ah, yeah, sorry, yeah. You got a little box with this, didn't you? An RF thing where you could switch between TV and a VCR or something like that. Still got that somewhere, I think, in the loft. But yeah, same resolution as the Spectrum as well, I think, roughly, wasn't it? But yeah, just more colour. And the sound just sounded exactly the same. I know it's got a Texas Instruments chip in it, but I think it's the same square wave. And it's 3-channel again with a noise channel, so yeah, all the games sounded like Spectrum games anyway. So it was only really the colours that really showed off kind of an evolution of sorts. So it's still in 1987, and it's the return of Clive Sinclair, and not being able to use the Sinclair name, he used a mail order company, Cambridge Computers, and they produced a laptop called the Z88, and I have two of these. One has a slip case and the other does not, and they are two slightly different models of the Z88, and I can't remember which one is which. So yeah, 1987, runs a low power CMOS variant of the Z80 processor, running at just over 3.2 or something megahertz, powered by 4 AA batteries. Just have a look at this one here. Right. Nice chunky manual. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Tells you how to use it. Came loaded with some software. Yep. Nice little guide on how to load batteries and RAM packs and EEPROM packs, which I'll come on to. I can't even, oh yeah, press both shift keys at the same time to power on and off. Independent support, the Z88 Users Club. I wonder if that's still going. That's it. If you're in a Z88, Club Magazine, Software Library, Help, Spurs Service, details of how to join. Wow, enclose a check. That's up there. Subscription rates there. £17.90 for 12 issues. Very nice. Back in the day when these things used to happen. And then the computer itself, you have to be careful removing this because the rubber keys, you don't want them catching on this kind of sharp piece here. So which one is this? It's a lovely thing. So yeah, Z88. It has a little contrast wheel here, power here, and this is, I guess, serial, yeah. Nothing else on this one. I think it's the other one that has the bits and bobs. But we can see here this little trapdoor and we can see we've got 512k of flash RAM. This is a modern thing, I think. This is a non-volatile modern storage that uses flash RAM, I think. Whereas back in the day, used EEPROM, and you could actually wipe the EEPROM in. I think it was with slot 1 maybe, where you could actually wipe the EEPROM, and then 128k of RAM as well. I forget how much RAM it comes with actually. I don't know if it's 32k. I could probably look it up. 32k of RAM and 128k EEPROM or EPROM or ROM internal memory as standard. Yeah, so this gives it a memory boost. And I think, I can't remember now, it's been ages since I used it, but I think this is a split of giving it additional memory in addition to flash memory that you can actually store things on. And you have a foot type thing which flicks down, puts it at a better angle. God, what's happened to this camera? I don't know if I knocked something there. Anyway, so the keyboard is an absolute dream to type on. I mean, you can hear it, but you know, compared to other laptop keyboards, it's very quiet and it's incredibly responsive as well. I mean, I've taken this into meetings just as kind of a laugh and typed up notes on it and such, and it's really, really good at it. The membranes do degrade though. Both of these have had new membranes fitted. And when you lift up, you can see here the battery compartment where you stick your 4 AA batteries. And that will give you 20 hours, supposedly, of runtime, of active use. Of course, when you stop doing things on this, the CPU's frozen, and you get a massive standby time. I mean, some people have said that you can get a year on standby. And of course, there's an issue in terms of when you're using volatile storage, that if your batteries go, you lose the contents of that storage. I believe there's a capacitor, maybe. I'm trying to remember if I'm thinking about this right or I'm thinking of the Atari Portfolio. I believe there's a capacitor on the board though that will give it just enough juice for you to be able to replace these batteries. So yeah, it's a fantastic machine. It's been upgraded. I think the OS is version 4 point something, but I think there's a newer version out now. And I just want to compare the two that I've got here. So just keep all this together. Why have I got two? No idea. Probably for spares. So yeah, the user guide is slightly different on this one compared to this one. Don't have the nice shiny picture. This is a, where are we? Second edition. So presumably, is this one earlier or later? Third edition, yeah, okay, so I don't have a first edition, I only have a third and a second edition. Still smells good. 218 pages, let's see if they've shortchanged us. 200, yeah, so there's more pages in this one, but I don't know about the font size or anything like that, and I've not compared the two to see what's actually different in them. So, same deal again. They look fairly similar. I'm not seeing any obvious differences. Except we have this. Compare and contrast. You can see here, if you get the light just right, that they have gotten rid of this little slot connector thing. But you can see where it was, which means they've added metal to the mould, but haven't done it to any level of perfection. So yeah, you still see the ghost of what once was. As you can see, it's not quite as nicely textured as the rest of it. So yeah, this one has a slot. What do you do with that slot? Well, you have an edge connector. And I remember looking at it years ago, and I don't believe there was an awful lot that came out for it, if anything at all. Potentially why they ceased it, but you know, feel free to correct me if there was something that you could do with this. Any cool expansions that you could plug into it, but yeah. I assume it was on the first gen, Z88. I assume this is more of like a second gen. And everything else is exactly the same. Trapdoor here, we've got nothing in there because all my bits and bobs are in this other one here. So yeah, the Z88 is an amazing thing. The only thing I lament is really that I wished the screen had been just a little bit taller, so you could do a bit more with it, you could see a bit more, because it does feel sometimes like you're looking through a letterbox. But yeah, I can forgive it that, because it is such a fantastic machine. I really wish it could have been released under Sinclair, but you know, there you go. He'd had this on the go for many years, I believe, this portable idea. And I believe again that this was a Rick Dickinson design, so that makes it, you know, more Sinclair, I guess, than the Amstrad Spectrum models that came out. This is proper. And I have power supplies for these as well. So each gen seems to have a different kind of power supply, or different shaped power supply. You can see there, maybe, the differences. Very different looking thing. I don't know, honestly don't know which one belongs to which. This one I got with one of them. This one I bought separately because this power supply has now died and I just need to have a look at it. But I wanted to get a power supply for each of them. So yeah, this looks a bit older, but I don't know, it's probably cost a bit more because they actually put the Cambridge computer into the mold, you know, so yeah. So yeah, I gotta fix this one. So yeah, that is 1987 and the Z88s. So we're skipping on now from 1987 to 1989, and I'm holding in my hands a dead computer, which if anyone saw a previous video, this A3000 died, and I have not yet been able to resurrect it. Now I did start building a reproduction board and that didn't work. I started building a second one, which is what's currently inside this one. But I've not actually finished it yet because I got fed up with A3000s and just couldn't be bothered. So I'll probably return to that at some point in the future. Still, I think it's one of the greatest computers ever made. This is a 4 meg model. It has a 4 meg upgrade in it. I can't really, it's not screwed together at the moment, but you can see there, there's an IDE module here which has some solid state, I think it's compact flash storage attached to it, Ethernet, serial, parallel, audio, mono video, RGB video, and the big 16-bit module connector, power switch there. It's a pretty bulky thing, isn't it? And the floppy drive, which isn't really sitting in there properly at the moment, and the reset switch I've not refitted. But whilst it's one of the greatest computers ever made, RISC-2 processor, amazing 3D performance and such, they are pretty much like lemmings, and the batteries inside them explode and take everything out around the well, the battery area. you have the ROM chips, you have the keyboard controllers, all the mouse and such in this area here. And I am actually sick of them now, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this one. It is... Oh wait. So this is a reproduction board. I've not yet fitted, again, the where am I pointing? The memory expansion thing here. I've not yet fitted that, but you know, it's fairly complete. Am I expecting it to work? Probably not. I don't know whether to just abandon the 3000 entirely and just stick with my A3010, which is my daily driver. The downside is though that the A3000 has an 8-bit module slot here, 16-bit one here, and I typically have an Ethernet module plugged in here so that I can connect it to the internet for an Ethernet to Wi-Fi adapter, which makes it a lot easier to get things and put things onto it, especially when you consider the 3000 is fairly old, as I say, 1989, based on the models that came out, I guess, in 1987 when the RISC-2 first appeared in the 300 series and 400 series. And this is the first all-in-one model that came out. It's a lot larger than the A3010 as well, but it does have a lot of stuff like Ethernet and other bits and bobs. I'm trying to remember now what came out, what they actually took out. Obviously the A3000 has the 4 main chips as discrete ICs, the RISC-2 I/O controller, memory controller and video controller, whereas on the 3010 they're all system on a chip. So it's quite a big thing. It is beautiful. I think it's one of those things, British, I kind of call it a British innovation. Obviously RISC wasn't new, or the idea of RISC had been floating around in other places. But, you know, this is the first computer to actually come with it. Mass-produced home computer using RISC architecture. It's a beautiful Acorn. Some call it the Archimedes, although I noticed that, well, it doesn't say Archimedes on these anymore, but it does have the Archimedes logo, so yeah, I guess we call it an Archimedes. And some people call all of the A range, the A3010, A3020, etc., call them Archimedes, and why not? Beautiful computer. As you can see, this one is quite yellow. So, as I demonstrated, there's an 8-bit module. 4 meg upgrade would go in there once I have fitted the actual connector for that. And that's about it, 8 megahertz. Does great 3D stuff, but was never really exploited back in the day. So yeah, the Acorn A3000. So I didn't really mention why I got the A3000, and the answer was because we had them at school at one point. In '88, I think it was, went into the computer lab, and there were 2 of the, not the all-in-ones, what are they called? Is it the A305 or A310? The keyboard, the unit and the monitor. So 2 of those, and it was a very high ratio of students to computers, so you didn't really get much of a look in. You'd end up just watching people play, the likes of Lander and Interdictor, and it was so much head and shoulders above anything else we'd ever seen on a computer. And then fast forward a year or so, and the computer room was then full of A3000s. 2 banks either side, just chock full, all networked up together, and we'd go in there and play chocks away, mostly on our lunch breaks, until the computer teacher caught wind of it and basically said we're not allowed to play games anymore, and he gave me an A3000 manual, and I never went back again. Totally lost my interest, because all I wanted to do in it was play games. So when I was revisiting my vintage computer history, and I'd bought everything that I used to own, I started branching out, and then the A3000 was one of those things I wanted. And it's a very difficult machine to maintain. Most of them have the battery damage, and that battery damage can endure even when you've cleaned it. 4-layer board, I think it is. So my main A3000 was fixed, broke, fixed, broke, and then fixed, and then broke again. So I'm kind of fed up with it, as I said. So yeah, that's the A3000. So what do you do when your vintage computer collection has reached a threshold? You think you've got enough stuff, it's taking up a lot of space, and yet you have this hankering for something additional. Well, I thought I'd find something small and something that was different to anything else I had. And so I settled upon this, the Atari Portfolio. Made famous by Terminator 2 when John Connor hacks the ATM, of course. It's an Atari product released in 1989 and was originally a design from a company called DIP Computers, who were based in Guildford, Surrey. And it has 128K of RAM. It has a connector here for storage cards and the like. And it also has a slot here, which allows you to connect things like serial and parallel port devices. And I think there was also maybe a floppy drive expansion for this. I don't actually remember. But this just clips in, and then you can attach a printer to it. It's quite a significant increase to the footprint of the machine. You know, it's over a third extra again. And of course you have to remember not to lose your little thing when you're using this. It takes AA batteries in here, which I do need to remove if I'm going to be storing it for, you know, any length of time. I wonder if the batteries actually still work. If I can remember, how do you switch this thing on? Yeah, okay, I can't remember how to switch it on. Or it could be that the batteries are dead. Let's just have a look. There's probably some obvious thing here somewhere. My eyes aren't great at the moment. Yeah, this isn't good, is it? I can't remember how to switch the damn thing on. Oh! Batteries are probably dead anyway. Probably just take them out. So I'm not going to cause any damage to the thing. So 3, is that right? 3, yeah, I guess 4.5 volts roughly. So yeah, the memory expansion was interesting. I've got one here somewhere. So this is a 128K. The interesting thing about these is that they're actually battery backed up. So there is a battery in here. I can't remember what the type of battery is. I can't even remember how to open it up. There's a little switch here you can flick, and then there's a little thing here that allows you to remove the battery. And if you remove the battery, then you lose all the storage. So in order to preserve the state of this memory, you had to plug it in, power it, and then you could remove the battery here whilst it was being powered by the device. So it's a very interesting machine. What do I have for it? I have it's an original power adapter, and I have some spares. So it's a spare screen bezel. Always have a spare keyboard membrane hanging around, and a spare keyboard as well, just in case. So yeah, kind of bought these little bits just in case, just to future-proof it a little bit. And also, more recently, as I showed in a previous video, this device here, which doesn't have batteries, allows you to connect via USB to your machine to transfer files to it, and there's a utility that you can download for your PC which will allow you to talk to this and read files off it and write files to it, which you can then of course access via the portfolio. It plugs in like that. So there you go, all singing, all dancing, and all I've really run on it is the Terminator 2 pin code program thing, which isn't the original one, but it does do the same thing. Scroll through loads of numbers until it gets to a 4-digit thing, and that comes with this APF01 comes on this memory card. So you can relive that moment and then promptly switch the thing off again and put it back in the loft. I will probably return to this one day because I want to play some games on it. I want to play some adventure games and such. Probably quite suited to this, you know, if we could get the magnetic scroll stuff ported over to it, that would be really lovely. So yeah, that is the Atari Portfolio. And it served a purpose of allowing me to get another vintage computer without taking up space. So yeah. So back onto my journey of completing my collection of computers that I used to own. After the Spectrum Plus 2 and the Master System, I left the 8-bit world in about '89 and I bought an Atari ST. And it was an STFM. In '89 though, that's when the STE came out, which is what this is. So the ST came out in around '85 originally. I got the STFM when it was dying out. And the reason for that is because I've been saving for a very long time. And you could get them for about $270. And that was a good price. And I was saving and buying the magazines, checking the listings. And then when it came time to buy them, I saw all of a sudden the ST was something like $399. And I wondered what was going on here. And I realised that it was a new model, the STE. And so I managed to snag an STFM, 512K or 520. And that became my thing then for many years. And I love the ST. I played many games, and my favourite types of games were the likes of Dungeon Master, Bard's Tale, Laser Squad. And I'm trying to remember, there were a whole load of games like Dungeon Master that I played. Captive, I think, was one where you have to control robots and the like. But just trying to remember now what I used to play, it was mainly the likes of Bard's Tale. So yeah, I got an STE this time around when I was rediscovering my roots, just because I didn't have one back in the day and it provides some additional functionality. This one is gone slightly yellow again, and this is the peroxiding. This was peroxided about 8 years ago, but the issue with the peroxiding is it weakens the plastic, it weakens the inhibitors, preventing the yellowing, and eventually the yellowing will return with a vengeance. And this is kind of what's happening with this one now. It used to look great, and now it doesn't look so great, and will probably get worse. So this has had a 4 meg upgrade. Another reason for getting the STE, because the memory is in Sims and it's a lot easier to upgrade it. The other thing as well is enhanced games. I wanted to try the handful of enhanced games that were out there. And also there are people who are writing new games or adapting existing titles and leveraging features such as the blitter and the increased colour palette. Even though the palette went from 512 colours to 4096, it could still only display 16 on screen at once. And the other thing the STE could do was PCM sound via DMA. Oh, and it also had a couple of enhanced joystick ports on the side here that I've never actually used. So I think they were Atari Jaguar compatible. And everybody knows the ST, music workstation, the best thing you could get for music production. Sorry, it's a bit blurred here. You know, the MIDI ports here, the expansion connector here, and all the usual ports at the back here. And still got the original floppy drive in there. Is that a disc in there? Yeah. Oh, look at that. Atari Family Curriculum. I've probably wiped that. I've probably got something like a hard disk driver on there just in case. So the way I tend to use this is with an Ultra Satan. So I've got 2 discs in there. One I think is in the Atari ST format, and the other one I think is FAT12. It's been a while. And this connects to the ACSI port on the ST and is presented as discs if you use the right driver, which I can't remember the name of the driver now, but yeah, I did pay for that one. You probably know what it is. And also to power the Ultra Satan, I actually use the ST. So I have here, this connects to the expansion connector,
and gives me 5 volts. So there you go. You plug that in and you've got some USB ports taking power from the ST itself, so I can power the Ultra Satan without having to have another USB cable going to the mains or whatever. So that's handy. And then the thing that every ST user had was a port extender, because the default ports obviously were underneath here and were a pain to take out if you wanted to go from mouse joystick to 2 joysticks if you were playing Kickoff or Kickoff 2, another great game by the way. Player Manager, that was fantastic, I used to love that. And flight sims, just remembering now, yeah, flight sims, I'm big on flight sims, and used to play F-19 Stealth Fighter on it a lot. There was also a tank game, M1 Tank Platoon, that I used to love playing on it as well. Obligatory SCART cable here for good RGB out into my OSSC. Then of course we have the horrible original mouse. Got nothing good to say about this, because how often we had to clean the rollers, it was a nightmare. So when I delved back into the ST, I saw that there was this DB9 to USB adapter that you could get, and you can actually program the firmware on this. You can tweak it, sensitivity and other things as well. So yeah, I tend to use a regular optical USB mouse on the ST. It works a hell of a lot better. And then I also got one of these made, which I've never tested out yet. So it is an MV16 sound card. And anyone who played BAT back in the day, or BAT or BAT 2, I think it was the Bureau of Astral something or other, graphical adventure game from France. They were crazy, the French, loved it. And also games like Cult, K-U-L-T. They're just crazy games that came out, they were just wonderful. So this MV16 sound card should hopefully work with BAT. I've never tried it though. I got it made. I found a design online. Shapeways maybe, I don't know. Does Shapeways do 3D printing, or am I thinking of something else? Who does the PCB stuff where you just send them Gerbers or Gerbers, and they just send you the finished product? So yeah, the original came in like a cardboard case, black cardboard case, I remember. And yeah, this just plugs in, and one day I'm actually going to try it out and see if it works. Of course, that means I can't plug in my USB to power the Ultra Satan, so I'd have to power the Ultra Satan externally. But yeah, the ST, I had it for many years, and as I say, this one's been upgraded to 4 meg of RAM, and there's nothing else internally that's changed apart from the keyboard. I replaced the rubber domes with the TT Touch rubber domes, which gives it much more of a bounce back, so it's a much nicer keyboard feel. But yeah, the Atari ST, I mean, going from a Spectrum Plus 2 and a Sega Mastersystem all of a sudden to these expansive games which were hundreds and hundreds of kilobytes, multiple discs, and yes, the music sounded exactly the same as the Spectrum, because the YM, is it the YM chip? Is very similar sounding to the AY in the Spectrum, but still playing the likes of what were those graphical games that had lots of sub games in. You had like Joan of Arc and Defender of the Crown as well. You know, all those games where you're just looking at those graphics thinking, wow, that looks photorealistic. So yeah, it was the Discovery Pack that I bought originally back in '89, and that came with a game that I haven't actually mentioned, which is absolutely freaking amazing, and this is called Carrier Command. Now, can't believe I forgot about Carrier Command, because it's one of the best games I think ever made. It has the right level of kind of interaction and strategy. You know, you're flying things and then you're having to do your strategy, you're having to take over the islands, build resources, manufacture things,
go out, build your mantas, your walruses, your weapons and such. And yeah, that game kept me occupied for so damn long. This ST, I think I've got some damage to some of the support posts because the screws aren't necessarily gripping properly. I'm going to have a look at that. I do like my machines to fit together well. These things are heavy, aren't they? Nothing special in terms of serial number. 41996X2, whatever that is. So yeah, I'm not here to start a war with the ST versus the Amiga, because at the end of the day, this is what I had, and I love it. And I never really played a lot of the games that the Amiga was better at. You know, the arcadey type games, things like Lemmings, couldn't really notice a huge amount of difference. Things like Kick-Off, yes, we would have more of a plain background on the ST, maybe a bit of a stripe, but the Amiga version may have, you know, a textured pitch and that kind of thing. But I never really missed it because I never actually saw an Amiga. And I had one friend who owned an Amiga. I never played on it. I saw one game once, I think it was Rainbow Islands. And yeah, I never really had any envy for the Amiga. This was my baby. So it represented many years of my computing life. And it was also the end of kind of the non-PC era, because after this there was a brief stint with consoles again, I have to say, which I've chosen not to collect again because I just don't have any warm fuzzy feeling when I think about them. The likes of the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. I did have a Mega Drive for less than a year. I had a Super Nintendo for a number of years, but again, they don't really scratch the itch. And the only thing really on the Super Nintendo, yes, I completed Super Mario World. Contra 3 The Alien Wars was just stunning, and the sound chip in the Super Nintendo was just out of this world. But anyway, I should be talking about the ST. So yeah, years of my life, the ST. I've come back to it, and in subsequent reveals of my kit you will see more Atari, because I've already done the 8-bit Atari in the form of the 130XE, and that was really me just coming back to Atari and seeing what I missed back in the 80s. Never saw an 8-bit Atari, so that was me filling a gap. But then there were things that went on beyond the ST. Things actually that came out around the time or just after the STE. In 1990 we had something, in 1992 we had something else. But I'm going to get to that. So yeah, Atari ST. Beautiful. So sticking with 1989, and just after the Atari STE came out, we had a very unusual proposition. And it was this thing, the Sam Coupe by Miles Gordon Technologies. And unlike the Amigas and the STs of the day, this used a Z80 processor, so we're back to the world of 8 bits. And considering that the ST and Amiga came out in mid to late 85, it seemed like an odd choice to release another 8-bit computer some three and a half years after the 16 bits had been firmly established and had also established, you know, marketing dominance. So yeah, but it's a very interesting machine and it is a beautiful design. Now, this isn't the original box because unfortunately when I got this shipped to me, the box was very badly damaged, and it also damaged the polys. Whatever hit it, and it hit it with some force, the whole thing was just buckled. But fortunately the computer inside was fine. So yeah, this is just the box I used to store it in. I still have the original box flattened down in the loft, and this box has also had its fair share of bumps and knocks, but I don't mind that, that's what it's for. And it's a reproduction box again from console boxes. I'll sort this camera out in a minute once I've opened it up. Probably going to have to tip this a bit to slide it out onto the desk. Let's see what happens. coming out. There's a letter in there. I have to blank out the name and address on that. Forgot that was in there. Okay, let's just get this thing out. Not the best way of doing it, probably the best doing it on the floor. Let me just you know, you want to meet your adoring public. Okay. Made a bit of a dog's dinner of that, but everything is good. Okay. So yeah, these are the original polys. Quite a few bits chipped off them. I did try to fix where the dent was, where the impact happens. You can see around there. I've had to use some special glue just to try and bond things together against that dent I couldn't really get rid of. So yeah, lifting this off. Down there. It's stuck to the wires as usual with heat and this kind of material. So you can see the polys have come up on the wires there. So we have Flash plus Sam's demo by Bo Jangborg. Is that Sam Coupe graphic art spectacular? You have the user's guide to the SAM drive. Pretty nice manual there. Mel Croucher. Yeah. Not quite as thick as the original Spectrum and ZX81 ones, but still nice to see. What else we got in here? Blanking plate for a 3.5-inch floppy. Communications interface. So I just can't remember what this is for. It's got a very long ribbon cable attached to it though, with almost looks like one of those old-fashioned printer Subtronics type things, and there's a 9-pin port on the back as well. So to be honest, I have no idea what this is for. So maybe you can enlighten me, or I could probably just Google it. Away. We have a tape flash. This is the demo that accompanies that booklet. And is that meant to be yellow? I'm not sure what colour that was meant to be originally. Maybe it was, but I suspect not. I've probably just shoved a ROM chip in here because I did upgrade the ROM in this machine. So this is probably the original, maybe. If you can read, it's not going to focus on this, is it? Go on, focus. The phone's being a pain, but yeah. I can't even read that right, and it's too small for my eyes. In short, arrow points to, yeah, blah blah blah. Original PSU is quite a monster. If I can get the wires out, which I can. And we have a number of different voltages being presented on this as well. So yeah, it's a very nice to have the original power supply with it. I think there are reproductions of the PSU. Let's put that over there. And take this top part away. And then the computer itself, which doesn't look easy to get out. Probably easier just to turn the whole thing upside down. But, oh no. Hey. And a little thing there, I'm not sure what that is, a piece of cardboard off the main box. So yeah, serial number looks quite high. Nice metal solid base there with some air vents. Perhaps there should be some screws in here that I'm missing, presumably for the floppy drive to keep that thing in place. I've only got one floppy drive in this unit, and it does work thanks to Ian Gledhill of Mutant Caterpillar, who refurbished it and got it working again because it wasn't when it arrived. Obviously slightly more yellow than the surrounding plastic, but that's fine. And the blanking plate that was here as well, I think it was there was an additional blanking plate in the box which hadn't been used, I guess, hadn't been exposed to light or heat or whatever. So yeah, I just replaced this one with this. And the only aesthetics thing about this is that the Sam Coupe logo is a bit faded here as well, but I'm not too bothered about that. So this is a beautiful looking machine, it really is. Just checking I've got the, I don't know if there's meant to be little rubber things on the feet or whether they just are meant to sit like that. But it's kind of an unusual design because the keyboard sits quite high up, but it is pretty comfortable. You don't have the raised elements on the keys like you do on a regular keyboard. And this really was its own thing. It was designed to be a step up from the Spectrum, and for that reason it had some form of emulation where it could play a lot of only 48K games because the memory on the 128, I think the Sam Coupe worked in a completely different way and it couldn't really handle the way the 128 addressed the extra memory, and also it couldn't reproduce the AY sound chip, I think. So you were limited to 48K games only, and also because this ran at 6 MHz on a Z80, it had to introduce wait states in order to slow it down enough, but I don't think it could quite get to the right speed, and that meant that some games wouldn't load because the loaders were quite sensitive. So yeah, I don't know how much mileage there was in emulation, and in terms of games as well, you know, there were some games that came out for it, but you know, this never really impressed in the same way that, you know, maybe the ST and the Amiga did. And the only saving grace really for this was the price, which I believe was about £150 back in 1989, right at the end of 1989, I believe just in time for Christmas. So it didn't sell well, but it's one of those machines, that's a bit of a ding there, isn't it? Tiny bit of a ding. It's one of those British machines which is just bonkers crazy. You know, not only did it come out a few years too late for what it was trying to do, but it actually had some serious wacky, and I say that with admiration, really wacky design intent and a really solid machine. I feel this is a lot more better put together than an ST or an Amiga, personally. Just feels more solid. I think the keys as well are better than the ST or the Amiga. And, you know, to churn this out, if it was 150, I only looked at Wikipedia, which said it was originally slated for earlier in 1989 for a price of £149.95 or whatever. So I don't know whether that was the actual price. But given the time period, you know, that was incredibly cheap. And I'm not sure what price the Spectrums were getting knocked out by then, because the Spectrum still had a couple of years of life left in it. But we'd evolved then into the plus 2A, plus 2B, plus 3, which had simplified circuits, which removed compatibility. Edge connector was pretty much redundant by that point, and so prices were reduced. And I'm imagining that that would be £150 with the default 256K of RAM, and possibly without any floppy disks drives. I can't imagine any machine coming out for that price with a floppy drive in there. So I imagine that these two were blanks, and then you probably had to load from tape. Something I've never done on the Sam Coupe, by the way. So yeah, we have power, we have a SCART, proper SCART, proper full-size thing. Light pen, audio out in there, cassette, a little bit faded the writing there. And an expansion connector, what do we call it, a Euro connector, similar to what the Archimedes range had back in the day, the 16-bit Podual expansion. Big red reset button there, mouse, which I don't actually have. I don't know what the standard is for the mouse port on a Sam Coupe. Single joystick port, and then MIDI in, MIDI out, and then sending a break, which I assume is what I'm sending an NMI or something to crash it, and actually an on and off thing here. So yeah, it is an absolutely beautiful piece of industrial design. This model here has been upgraded to 512K of RAM, and obviously has this floppy drive in there now, which I need to find the right screws for this thing because it is not sitting properly. And I'm wondering actually, because I've got some bits and bobs I got for this to enhance its capabilities, and I'm just wondering whether maybe I'll find some screws in this box. So if I just put that beautiful machine up there for a moment, and in this box I have a Trinity and some other things as well. Let's get all this stuff out. Doesn't seem like I've got screws, but I'll go through everything. So we have some couple of standoffs in there, can't remember what that's for. We have the Trinity Mass Storage Quick Start Guide. Let me just get this. Update 4, boot ROM, update 2, update 3, lots of updates for this documentation, EEPROM configuration, and from Colin, who is the man, Quasar, all things Sam Coupe. And we have a price list here, so going to be out of date, February 2021. Got a whole load of hardware that has been created for this computer, so there's still a very strong following. I'm going to say it was really unsuccessful. It does have a very strong, call it, cult following. So people who owned them back in the day have a significant love for it, as people tend to do for a lot of things. If you bought an Auric 1 back in the day, if you bought a Dragon 32 back in the day, you'd have a lot more love for it than I would do coming to the platform fresh, because I'd be instantly comparing it to the things that I used to own or the things that I own now. Never connect an interface to the SAM while it's powered on. Do not connect an external USB power supply. Blah, blah, blah. So this is a HDMI add-on. So we have mass storage, and we have a HDMI add-on. And what's inside here? Okay. So this is something to enable connecting multiple peripherals. Let's get that. I'm going to do my scissors. Shaky hands, shaky hands. So I haven't opened this yet because I haven't actually connected all these things together at once. I've only done it individually. The screws here seem to be, I think, yeah, maybe I had to put this together because it's a 3D printed case. So yeah, this connects to the SAN and then gives you the ability to have two of these things plugged in at the same time. And this is the Trinity, which gives you mass storage here via SD card. And Ethernet, which I've not actually tried out yet. And yeah, I got a 3D printed case for this, which I need to... I don't know if the screws actually hold properly, and maybe it's just the nature of the 3D printedness of this device. But yeah, that connects to your SAN Coupe, and then you can load software from SD card. So you could plug that into there. Actually, that's plug into there, does it? Yeah, that plugs into there. Is this male or female? Yeah, so that's female. So yeah, Mr. Trinity into there. And then I've also got this HDMI as well, which I cannot remember. Well, apart from generating HDMI. I think there's a Raspberry Pi Zero in there, which is kind of typical for when you look at the likes of Ben and his HDMI add-on for the Spectrum. That's also using a Pi Zero. And what is that? Discrete audio out 3.5mm. And then you have a couple of micro USB, and then a mini, is that mini or micro? That's mini HDMI, isn't it? And then a few buttons on here which I can't remember what they do, but next time I fire this thing up, I'll read the bloody manual. Connected to your TV, 3 hot mail, one of the games takes a couple of seconds to initialize. Maybe I've got some more instructions somewhere which remind me what these buttons do, because there's nothing written on. Maybe it's written on the board inside, but yeah. I don't think I got any more documentation with this HDMI add-on, because this is all Trinity. So yeah, all Trinity. And then the software for Trinity, which again, I can't remember, Auto Boot Installer. So yeah, this has had a replacement ROM, which I think was part of the Trinity. Can't remember now. It's been a few years since I actually installed it, and the 512K memory upgrade. So yeah, I guess the system would look a bit like this. Give that a good bit of support. Yeah, so it doesn't sit flush along on the floor. So I probably want to maybe elevate that slightly. I think the screws have just popped out of it. Actually, it's not a good fit. Let's just take that out. Yeah. So the screws aren't actually grasping anything. And I haven't got my good screwdrivers with me at the moment, so it's just going to be, yeah, they just push in. I need to have a look and see what's going on inside the case, because they're not really capturing the bits. These ones are at the bottom, so yeah, I just need to investigate what's going on with these top ones. But yeah, that's pretty cool. In the way that the ZX Band Plus and the Chroma 81 work together in the ZX81, you know, you have this SD card solution and a HDMI out as well. Although, of course, you don't need to use the HDMI out, because I also have SCART cable for the SAN. And again, I think these cable ties denote which end things go into. And I'd need to re-look at what these actually denote. You know, is this the SAN end, or is this the TV end? And I'd have to look at that before I fired it up again. And probably put a little label on here as well, because these three things don't really tell me anything, they don't really inform me. But yeah, the SSM Coupe, really interesting machine. And I put it in the same kind of bracket as the Jupiter Race and the Grundy Newbrain, as being one of these just wild, imaginative, British creations from back in the day. This one came a few years too late. Had it dropped in 1986 maybe, it may have found its audience, because at that point in time people were shifting from the 48k Spectrum up to the 128, and with this only being backwards compatible with the 48, you're asking a lot of people to dispense with a machine, especially when they have all of these enhanced games for the 128, and they've grown used to the expanded memory and the 3-channel music. This had 6 channels, I think, a discrete SAA sound chip, which was pretty good for its time. And I think there is a lot of love for the sound capabilities of this one, although I haven't really explored it an awful lot. So yeah, 6 MHz CPU, 6 channels, and I think it had graphics processing hardware in here as well. And when you look at inside, which I'm not going to show you now because it's kind of screwed together, but the board layout is kind of a beautiful thing. It really is. And the reason I got this was because of the Jupiter Race and the Grundy Newbrain. This just represented something really different and really unique at the time. Sometimes you can kind of love the things that didn't do so well, and applaud the effort, because this was a really significant effort. So I had to have one in my collection so I could discover what it was all about, and try out some of the software and listen to the sound chip and play some of the games on it and such. I just learned how to use things like the Trinity, because I don't think it's as simple as some of the other platforms where you can literally just load anything. You can download images from anywhere and stick them on an SD card, with the div IDE or the div MMC, or the div MMC Future. You can just stick whatever you want on, snapshots, Z80, all different formats you can just shove and they just work. And I recall using this a few years ago, and it wasn't as simple as that. Some things worked, some things didn't work, and I couldn't quite get my head around why things didn't work. But I will be getting back into this again, firing up these peripherals and trying the HDMI output, probably for the first time, I think, because I think I ordered it, but I was in mid-Spectrum Next phase, doing all of that work, so I never really got the opportunity to give this new HDMI adapter a run for its money. So yeah, that is the SSM Coupe, and the last of Britishness really, because after this point there wasn't really any significant computer release to my knowledge. The Atari and the Amiga carried on for a bit, and that'll bring me to my next thing, but I don't think really a British computer was created beyond that point. A home computer, a fully fledged thing, designed thing with a case and a keyboard and a processing and language in ROM and that kind of thing. So yeah, that is the SSM Coupe. So continuing the journey, in 1990 Atari wanted to exploit some of the more powerful 68,000 processors, and in order to do so they created this. Now you can't really see much from a top down view. Let me just tilt that up. So this is an Atari TT30, and it's bought a 32 MHz 68030 processor and a 68882 math coprocessor. And this is one of the early TT models which had the CPU and FPU on a daughter board. And I got this. This is probably what was one of my most recent acquisitions actually. Why did I get it? Because I just wanted to see where Atari went from the ST that I used to own. And these things back in the day were so damned expensive, these workstations. This was originally designed to be a Unix workstation, but nothing happened on that front, I think for a couple of years. So released in 1990. there was really no Unix flavour for it. And so one of the reasons that it actually failed, unfortunately. So I just wanted to get one to have a look and see what it could do. So I bought this one. It was fairly inexpensive. It had damage, mainly internal. The bosses, the screw bosses, a lot of them had sheared off and failed, or weren't present at all. Probably due to people screwing and unscrewing constantly and not getting the thread lined up properly. And also maybe then falling back on larger screws to try and get the case to fit together. So I had to do a fair bit of work inside on that using nylon spacers, actually, on nylon washers, 1/2 mm nylon washers, which I super glued together to form, the correct height for each pillar, and then the screws would screw into those. So the case kind of fits together nicely now. The other thing that made it less expensive was the fact that there was no hard disk bracket or paraphernalia in here. It was purely a blanking plane, which I think I have here still. Yeah, so this is what originally came with it, just a blank, not much you can do with that. So I went to across the pond to buy a hard disk thingy. What's it called? So Best Electronics in California. Yeah, I've bought quite a lot of stuff from him in the past. So yeah, I got the various bracket bits and SCSI cable. Got a few SCSI cables actually, because yeah, I didn't get a SCSI cable with it, or maybe I didn't, it was the wrong length. And you have to get kind of a specific length for this, because there isn't, if you're too long, there's not much space to put all the excess ribbon cable, and too short and things just won't fit. So yeah, I bought this TT hard drive assembly kit. Cables, yeah, maybe I had a cable, I didn't use it. Shield, plastic cover, utilities diskette, power cable, blah blah blah. And the only thing I needed to do with this was sort out some rust, and the LED, I think, had gone. I think this has a yellow LED here and a green one for the floppy, although I can't remember which way around it is. So yeah, the whole rubber grommet thing that you get with the LED on this, and also the LED on the unit itself, the metal starts to rust, and eventually the thing just drops off, the thing that holds the LED. And that was the case in this one as well. So I 3D printed a new bracket for the LED for here, and then I bought a green and a yellow LED and just connected them to sockets and connected them to the relevant parts of the board. And similarly in this one, I got a new LED and wired it in, and Bob's your uncle. This isn't using a hard disk though, this is using a Blue SCSI 2, which is an SD card type interface, which is fairly generic. It is designed for use in kind of the old SCSI world, with a Molex power thing then. Yeah, so the Blue SCSI 2 works across a multitude of platforms, but it's very good. It's just a board with an SD card thing, and you basically put your disk images on there. Each image represents an entire disk, I think, a drive. Can't remember. But you can mount them on a Mac, and you can put stuff on them, and then put the card in here. The only downside to this configuration is I can't actually access the SD card without undoing the screws to lift this up to take out the SD card, put stuff on it, etc. But of course there are methods of getting stuff across to this. ParkP USB, which is a parallel thing, isn't it? Parallel port thing that you can plug in. And I can't remember, there are probably other methods as well as getting stuff onto that. As I mentioned, the grommets that hold the LEDs had died, and unfortunately I couldn't get one or two of these things. I had to buy a whole pack of these grommets to hold the LEDs in place. So now it looks nice. You know, you fire it up, you get a nice floppy LED. So I can't bloody remember. No, sorry, it was power. Yeah, I'm not talking about floppy. I'm talking about power. The power one had corroded away, and this one needed some work. But yeah, I have a diagnostic cart because I was getting a few issues with this when I first fired it up, and I just wanted to know whether it was just me or not. I think it came with comes with 4 meg. Did you call it ST RAM? I think. And then the other thing is TT RAM, the thing that you can really increase to. I think people have gone up to maybe 256 gig, or is it 128? So that this plugs in and then allows you to run some diagnostics on the hardware and the keyboard and such. It's handy to have that kind of thing. Version 1.5. And that's it really for that. It's I think that maybe came with the bracket, but I'm not using it. But it's kind of interesting to be able to go somewhere and actually buy something like a hard disk kit for a machine that came out in 1990. You know, they still have them. I'm not actually sure whether they still have them, or maybe I got the last one, I'm not sure. But it was great. And, you know, getting one of these fairly inexpensively, which only really had issues internally, and you can't really see them. You know, once the case is closed, it looks great, it looks fine. What else have we got? Now, the other reason this was cheap is because it didn't come with a keyboard. But before I get to that, I have upgraded the TT RAM on this. So the ST RAM is still 4 meg, but the TT RAM is now 64 meg. This is the original TT RAM board, which has now been replaced. I think this had 4 meg, maybe 4 and 4. Smells of old PCB. Yeah, so I keep that just in case. Unfortunately, these weren't socketed things, so you couldn't just replace them. The one I got, the replacement one I got, took SIM cards which I bought separately and just plugged in. I thought 64 meg would be enough for now. If I wanted to increase that, you know, I can easily do that. It's just money, isn't it, at the end of the day? And a TT Advanced Utilities disc. There's an Atari UK language disc and sysinfo, and I'm not sure what's on that one. It says school copy, Chris somebody or other, so whoever maybe owned this in the past. So it didn't come with a keyboard, and I thought it'd be dead easy, you know, to get a keyboard. So I had this for a while. Keyboard's quite essential. But of course, the Mega STE, I think, uses the same keyboard as this. So, you know, there's an option there. If you see a Mega STE keyboard come up, you can get one for your TT. I ideally wanted a TT one though, and what I ended up with is a really, really yellow one. And it's kind of like Roy Neary in Close Encounters, you know, when he has that sunburn on one half of his face. Probably doesn't show up as much on camera, or maybe it does. But yeah, these keys are really yellow. I'm not sure why, because you probably can't see that, but the lower you go down on the keycaps, you get to kind of their original colour. So yeah, it's a dirty, stinking yellow. And I also had to replace the membrane because the membrane looked to have had water ingress. It looked basically rusty and full of mould. So yeah, this keyboard fits the working. Why wouldn't this go on? Where is this supposed to go? Am I being stupid here? I thought this just kind of... Maybe it just goes like that. And then of course your display goes on top of that, but I don't have a null CRT, so I can't complete the look. So yeah, the TT sporting a 68030 running at 32 MHz and a system bus of 16 MHz because they were being cheap. The other thing as well is that the keyboard kind of, the wire comes out this side, but it actually plugs in somewhere on this side. And this gives you your mouse as well, because your mouse port is in the side, there, your joystick port or whatever, is like that. So yeah, and I don't think I've screwed this together properly because the keyboard can be shifted. So yeah, I need to have a look at that. And I can hear something moving about inside. So yeah, I'll have to open it up again. So yeah, part of the enjoyment of this was actually going inside it and just fixing all the little issues inside and making it all nice and sweet again. There's no blitter in this. What else? Yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm going to end up doing with it. I have fired up some demos. There's only a few demos for the TT. One of them I got working and the other one I couldn't get working. I'm not sure if I need more ST RAM for it, and I'm not really sure how you go about upgrading the ST RAM in there. Because I can't, doing Googles and such, I can't find anything that goes above 4 meg. But I'm assuming there is a way of doing it. And people have created, obviously, the TT RAM upgrades for it. But I have fired up a few games, to see if they run faster, like Stunt Car Racer and such. But again, this was more, I'm going to fix it up and then I'm going to come back to it and try and actually do something with it. It's quite a noisy beast as well, the fan on the back. I did replace the fan with a modern fan. And that's all I really have for it, I think. Power cable, of course it uses VGA, which is handy, so I don't need to get any Atari specific cable for it. We've got a whole load on the back. Could probably do with getting a blanking plate for this, but why not have some additional ventilation. We've got audio left and right, which I have a cable for actually, but there's nothing exciting. It's just a phono type thing. Whatever's right and left, probably the wrong way around, just to get the audio out of it. You've got modem, and is that modem as well? And monitor, yeah, VGA, printer. That's the old ACSI protocol from the ST, and plug in an external floppy, and I assume, oh yeah, that's an external SCSI. That's one of the extra things I had to do to get the Blue SCSI 2 drive working, was to get some SCSI terminators and plug them in. I'm not actually sure whether the external one will work, because I think you have to have the terminators arranged in such a way. But yeah, this was really me just trying to look at, well, where did Atari go? What did it try to do beyond the ST to try and keep itself relevant and current? The emerging, I guess the more powerful machines in the Amiga range were starting to rumble, and the PC was starting to take off as well. And yeah, this was replaced a few years later, I guess you could say, replaced by the Atari Falcon in 1992. Less powerful machine, I guess people say. But this kind of represented the last of the box type machines where someone actually bothered to craft a unique shape, as opposed to just having a big beige box. The way that the Amigas went ultimately, the 4000, just ended up looking like a beige box. And I do really like the industrial design around this, these two discrete parts of the system. And the interesting thing about this one as well is it had two stickers on the bottom. So I suspect that this was, originally German, and it had a British sticker stuck on top. And I'm not sure whether that was, someone has stuck the British sticker on it to make it look a bit more, British, or whether it actually came from the factory like that. I'm kind of suspecting someone just stuck the sticker on. I've removed the sticker now and reverted to the German sticker. And, or have I? What's this saying? I can't actually remember now. No, just say G there, though. I assume that's Germany. Yeah, as I say, I do have the original sticker if I ever wanted to stick that back. So yeah, this was just a quest of interest. What happened? What was it all about? What could it do? And just wanting to own this computer. So yeah, that is the Atari TT. And there's not much more I can say about it, except that I am going to be firing it up again in the near future. And probably might post videos of some of the demos and such. But yeah, lovely looking machine, very solidly built, bit yellow, but hell, what can you do? So about 8 or 9 years ago, I was looking around. I'd already collected most of the stuff I used to own back in the day. And I was looking for interesting stuff, so that means going through Wikipedia and vintage computer sites. And I'd never heard of this before. So obviously I had an ST back in the day. I knew of the TT because I'd seen it advertised in magazines, but I'd never actually heard of the Falcon. And I think around the time it came out, I was probably just moving towards the PC, so my eye wasn't on other types of computers at the time. But this was a fascinating computer to me because it just looked like an ST with a different badge. And I was really keen to find out what it was all about. So as I say, about 8 or 9 years ago, I won an eBay auction for one of these. And it was €350. And the person selling it said they had a second one. And would I like that for the same price? So I said, yeah, please. So I got 2 Falcons for €700. One was a German with German keyboard. Actually, no, sorry, it wasn't German. It was Italian. And I bought a UK keyboard from Best Electronics and replaced the keyboard with a UK one. And eventually I sold that one. It was one of those things. I've got 2 Falcons sitting around. One of them is not going to get used. Do I really need a donor? Just in case, this one breaks. So just to give someone else an opportunity to own one, I sold it. So this is my one remaining Falcon. And it runs a 68030 processor at 16 MHz, has a 58001 DSP, which gives you 50 Hz, I think 16-bit 50 Hz, 8-channel stereo sound, which is pretty powerful. In fact, I'm not sure, maybe is the DSP even more powerful than the 68030 CPU, which as I say is only running at 16 MHz. It also takes a 68881 or 68882 coprocessor, which this has. I can't remember which one it is, the 1 or the 2. And this also has a 14 meg RAM upgrade. And the original IDE hard disk died, and so I've replaced it with something solid state. And this really brought in internal IDE and SCSI as well, so we've moved away from the more basic ACSI that you saw on other models like the the ST, etc. So this has proper SCSI and original floppy drive that still works. My other one floppy drive broke, and I replaced it. I couldn't quite get a fascia on the other one that looked right. I think it was a black fascia, and I couldn't get one this colour. But I've sold it on. I don't really care about that anymore. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much looking like an ST, assuming to save costs. So this was a successor of sorts to the TT, or was it? Were they designed for 2 entirely different things? Because maybe music production seems to be the focus of this one, given that it maintains the MIDI and also gives you the DSP as well, so you can mix those digital sounds in with MIDI instruments. Slight differences on the back because you have the SCSI port and you have disk and you have VGA. VGA is handled through a dongle, which I've got somewhere. So you've actually still got the old RF stuff here. Printer, modem, yeah, monitor, SCSI. I can't actually read upside down very well. Is that microphone? I'll probably turn it the right way around and have a look at them, but yeah, so nothing on the right side. And then on this side we have the super joystick ports that you found on the STE, the expansion connector as usual, and then those essential MIDI ports. I'm not really sure how popular this was when it came out in '92. I mean, I know it wasn't particularly popular in terms of sales, but I don't know how prolific it was in the music scene, because the Falcon was purchased by a company called C-Lab, and they made subsequent issues of the Falcon 1, the Mark 1, Mark 2, and the Mark 10, I think, which was a rack-mounted 19U thing. So I'm assuming that, you know, there was a group of people out there who did use it for music production, but I'm not really sure what musicians used it, or what albums, or how effective it was really, and whether there were other things coming out around the time dedicated for music creation that may have been gravitated towards more by musicians and producers and the like. But yeah, this was really just an interesting thing to see what it could do. And the first thing I did with it was play an Atari ST game. There's a good amount of backwards compatibility if you go to the right place, and people have adapted games from the ST to run on hard disk, and they've also adapted them to run on the Falcon 30 and the TT 30 as well. So there's a lot of games out there that run on the TT and Falcon, and there are quite a large number of games that run better as well. And it really depends on how the game is written. Things like Stunt Car Racer, back in the day with the ST, we would null modem cable serial, you know, link them together. And so I had two Falcons at one point, and so Stunt Car Racer will be running on the two Falcons, and it's a great game to play multiplayer. I don't have much for this. I've kind of mentioned the spec I have. Obviously, it needs a VGA cable, and the obligatory port extenders, which they still stick the old ports here. Different to the ST, the rear or the bottom case has this vent where there's a fan. There's shielding in here which people often take off. Sometimes the RAM upgrades prohibit fitting the case back together. But there are many RAM upgrades out there that allow you to have the metal shielding and the RAM upgrade. So yeah, port extenders. And then this is the VGA dongle connector. I don't know why they didn't just create a VGA port. Maybe I don't know, did the Atari monitors of the time have this form factor of connector? Power switch, reset button here. And this also has the TT key, not the TT keycaps, you know, the domes. You could buy those TT domes which were a bit more responsive than the original ones. They just give you a bit more spring in the keys. And this of course has CMOS in as well, and a battery in that chip. So I haven't fired this up in a long time, and I'm not sure if it will still work, and whether I might need to do some work on that. The battery probably not good anymore, so I really need to have a look inside this as well, and just, you know, give it its regular checkup. And now the next is kind of off my plate. I can revisit these a lot more often, which is a good thing, because I hate having them just sitting around not doing anything. So sticking with 1992 and Acorn's effort to corner the gaming market in the home computer space. And it was the Acorn A3010, which came out around the time of the 3020, which was more business orientated. The A3020 of course had the red function keys, and this A3010 has the green function keys. And coming out in 92, a good 5 years after the Archimedes range had launched, they decided now to build a machine for the home user which could connect to a TV and also had built-in joystick ports. So bearing in mind that this machine, the technology, the ARM, the RISC had been around since 1987, and games had been created for it from pretty much day one. So as there were no standard joystick ports back in the day, people would use things like serial connectors and RTFM joysticks. I can't remember what the RTFM, I know what RTFM stands for, but in the Acorn joystick world, I can't remember what that stands for. So there were multiple standards, maybe 2 or 3 standards before this even came along. And then finally they released something with joystick ports on. I think they're called Acorn joystick ports, these two here. And they are, I believe, Atari compatible DB9 connectors. So, you know, a whole load of games coming out in 5 years didn't support them. And then, you know, there were a slew of games that came out post that time. Mainly things like Amiga ports, like Zool and Speedball 2 and Gods and, you know, that kind of thing, which would then support these. But it's very hit and miss in terms of finding a game that supports them, which is really kind of annoying because you are then stuck with the keyboard, which I'm not a big fan of playing arcadey games on the keyboard. But of course there's a lot of mouse games as well. Anything that was Vectors 3D was excellent on this system. There were quite a few games released for it which were specific to the Archimedes. A lot of flight simulators as well, because that's where it really shone, shifting those vectors around. Super smooth flight sims. Compared to what was available for the likes of the ST and the Amiga, this was just head and shoulders above. And given the faster memory speed required for this machine, this runs 12 megahertz on 250 against the A3000, which was 8 megahertz. So the RAM was increased in speed from about 125 to 80 nanoseconds. So the whole thing yielded maybe, 50%, was it 50% maybe, increase in speed over the 3000. The downside though of the 3010 is you've lost the 16-bit expansion module in the back, which means that all you have is the 8-bit module that's in here. I've got an IDE module connected at the moment, and this presents 2 compact flash cards out the back through a 3D printed backplate that I got off eBay many years ago. So yeah, I can basically just remove and insert compact flash cards. These are 512 meg. And it means as well that I can, I'll get this back in there. Hold on. There you go. There is a screw roaming around inside this case as well that you may have just heard, and I need to open it up and find that. So yeah, I've got IDE, I've got loads of stuff installed on the compact flash cards. I basically do a backup of A to B, so they've both got the same content. And this compact flash card hasn't gone in properly, so I'm going to have to sort that out later and plug that in. I've also got there's the screw. I've got a Gotek plugged into here as well, just the basic one with the digital LED with the numbers. So I have to write down in the notes exactly what disk images are each number, and one of these low profile SanDisk USB, because I really hate having a big huge USB stick sticking out of the stick. So yeah, it's an ARM 250 processor, 12 megahertz as I said. That system on a chip which has the RISC-2 video controller, memory controller and I/O controller. This has also got a 4 meg memory upgrade in it as well. And the reason I got this, I like the look of it, and it was faster than the A3000, and I really like the green function keys as well. So this is my daily driver in the world of RISC in terms of discovering the software catalogue that was available for the Archimedes range. And the only downside, as I say, is I can't plug a 16-bit module because my A3000 has that. I have an Ethernet module for it, which means I can connect it to the internet. I can connect it and FTP files across 10 base T, 10 megabits a second. And this one I have to rely on serial or copying images to the Gotek. Some files are very large. Some games that were based on CD-ROM could be 100 meg, and it's not very efficient doing the old floppy drive method. It's also not really efficient doing the serial, because I think you get 19,000 maybe board at most before you start to have problems and the buffer overflows and transfers fail and that kind of thing. So yeah, I really like the look of this machine. I think it's one of the prettiest machines of its type in this form factor. I had the ST. I just think this looks nicer. The only thing that beats it, in my opinion, is the Commodore Amiga 1200. Am I allowed to say Commodore in reference to the Amiga? Or do we just call it Amiga? There you go. So yeah, RF, joystick ports, lack of module. I don't think this supports Ethernet, sorry. And I have a cable here which is kind of like a VGA looking thing to SCART. And an audio cable as well for that, to pump audio through the SCART. And I've also got the mouse I use on my, sorry, hiccups, 3000. I do have a USB, you can't actually see it, can you? There. I do have a USB to, I can't remember the standard of this mouse, but I do have a USB converter that will allow me to use a traditional USB optical mouse on this, which means that things are a lot easier to use. But yeah, it's a really interesting computer. It had some damage. The battery was fine, but the clock wouldn't hold the settings. The clock calendar chip was fine. I sent it to Ian Gledhill. It also had serial issues as well. So yeah, the battery's about here, the clock chip is about here. There had been some historic battery damage that had been cleaned up prior to me getting this unit, and that had damaged a couple of the serial chips near the battery. Ian replaced those for the serial port. Yeah, I'm getting confused because there were two issues, serial and clock chip. I think there was a trace broken between the battery and the clock chip, and the serial port was just a couple of chips that needed to be replaced. So this is now a fully operational machine, accepting the audio out, which is a bit fiddly. It will go from stereo to mono with just a slight twist, so I probably need to resolder this port here. And the other good thing about this machine is the mouse port isn't stuck under here anymore. It's there. So yeah. So that is the A3010. So we come to the end of this journey. And another machine that I did a video of alongside the Falcon and the A3010 not long ago is this. The Amiga 1200. Now, this was the box I got my replacement case in, because if you'd ever looked at that video that I made, I built this 1200 from parts. And the reason I did that was, wow, why did I want an Amiga 1200? I'm not a fan of Commodore, I'm not a fan of Amiga. I was a Spectrum, I was an ST, but the draw of the aesthetics of this computer, I think it's one of the most beautiful computers, or beautiful looking computers ever designed. So I bought a motherboard. I bought a keyboard, a non-working keyboard. I bought a new membrane. I bought replacement keycaps to create the ultimate Franken A1200. Look at that. Look at that. That is a thing of beauty, that is. Yeah, so as I say, the motherboard is original. I recapped it. As I say, new keyboard membrane because the keyboard wasn't working. I knew that when I bought it. I bought the bracket for the hard disk, but for some reason it won't fit. This case won't go on properly, so I need to revisit that. I got an LED assembly, a new part. People still make a lot of things for these computers, and you know, getting the case. I think I was at the back end of case availability, these reproduction cases, because I had to order this one from Australia, and I wanted a black one originally, but they just run out of stock, so I had to get a grey one. But have to say, the grey looks really good with the black keys, and I bought a 1200 sticker in black as well. And I bought a floppy drive from somewhere on eBay, and this floppy drive has a black button as well, so it kind of all looks good with the grey and black. It's very difficult to describe how beautiful this computer is. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing design. It really is. Slot here. So it's kind of a PCM CIA, if I remember. When I did this video on the three computers, this being one of them, and I started putting it together, I've kind of forgotten everything. And despite all the work I've done, you know, building up this computer, I still haven't switched it on. So I'm really going to have to do that. What have we got? Yeah, nothing to go in there. I don't even know what the connectivity is, to be honest, because I'm looking for, well, where does your video plug in? And I can't really read these legends on the back because it's grey on grey. But yeah, this is a thing of absolute beauty. Nice trapdoor there to stick stuff in. So what have we got? Mouse. Ugh, can't even read this. Probably need a torch. Disk drive. Yeah, my eyes aren't great, or the contrast isn't really great on these raised things. So yeah, I have no idea where you actually plug the video in. And maybe it'll become clear when I open my box of stuff, because I have a box of stuff that relates to this exquisite machine. I mean, can't go on enough about that. Beautiful. I got the replacement keycaps because I wanted to make as much of this machine, I guess, new as possible and just make it different. And the original keycaps were a little bit yellow as well. So I've got, as I mentioned, a box of stuff. Just move that out of the way a bit. So yeah, the PCM-CIA compact flash adapter, which takes a compact flash card, surprisingly enough. And this apparently, I can't remember what I wanted to do with that. I think, you know, you copy files onto this, you can then plug it in. I think there were also limitations with this in terms of the speeds that you can run the machine at, and there are lots of add-ons to, you know, beef up the CPU, some Raspberry Pi shenanigans. So yeah, plug that in and then you can hopefully transfer files to it using some mechanism. This here I have not yet fitted because I want to prove the machine works first before I start adding new stuff. So I wanted to go original where I could, and not just have a Pi in there running at some ridiculous speed, bypassing the processor, which is a 68020 processor running at 14 megahertz. So this is a A1200 8 meg RAM and an FPU and RTC. So yeah, I need to get a battery for that. So this gives me the real-time clock, floating point, and an upgrade of the base stock 2 meg up to 8 meg of RAM, and that will fit under, I guess, take the trapdoor off the bottom and then plug this in. That's a lot of pins. So yeah, once I've established this thing actually works, I'll be plugging that in, and then I'll be trying to work out how to use the thing, but I have no idea. It's completely alien to me, this. What else have we got? So this is the aforementioned disc bracket, which goes in this way. These go through holes in the board, and then this case is supposed to sit on top of it. So you've got a slope basically between here and here where the case kind of sits, but it just doesn't seem to fit. This bit feels too high, so I need to understand why that's the case and whether these cases are different and wouldn't fit this anyway, or is it something I'm doing? What else have we got? Huge power supply, and all that sound there is all the old keycaps and springs, as well as the I think I got new springs with the keycaps, so yeah, I've got a whole load of old springs in there. So this is not an original power supply. You can see there some laser etching on there. I guess that's like Amiga power, is that, or something? I can't read that myself. 5 volts, 4.9 amps, 12 volts, 2 amps, is that? Yeah, 12 volts, 0.5 amps. So yeah, big old power supply there, which has never been switched on. Okay. So an unopened Commodore Amiga RGB SCART cable. So that kind of clears up where the video plugs in. And we have audio left and right, phono jacks. So yeah, this is that 25 pin female? And presumably there's a 25 pin male on here, yes? Well, there's 2. That says video, yeah, I can read that. Yeah, so that goes in there. That will go in there. That will go in there when I eventually do plug up the courage to switch it on. This is, again, thanks to Mike Daly. I can't remember if I mentioned Mike in relation to this memory FPU and RTC upgrade. He kindly sent me this because he's a great guy. And he also sent me this tank mouse, which is a wireless tank mouse, recreation, reproduction, optical. Stick some batteries in there. It's very light. There's a funny little dongle in there. I guess for using it in... I don't know where that plugs in actually. I was going to say, I'm talking rubbish, yeah. It's been a while. Yeah. So it's just a wireless receiver in USB form there. So yeah, that plugs into the 9-pin DB9, and then presumably the yeah, no, it's, I'll open it with my nails now. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this is 3D printed. Presumably that plugs in. That plugs into a joystick port, and then you've got a cool wireless mouse, which is great. It feels really nice. It's got a nice texture to it. Yeah, I like that. What else have we got? Let's put that back in here. That's really cool, that the way they've fitted that adapter in there. Yeah, so this has updated Kickstart ROMs in it. It has a hard disk solution. I can't remember what it's using. I think maybe it's compact flash again inside. Can't remember. And yes, I paid for the Amiga ROS 3.2. I think you need that for a license before they will actually send you the ROMs. And the compact flash card I got, the IDE one, was pre-baked also from the same source. So my expectation is that I'll switch it on and it'll just boot into something and it'll work. And then I've got to figure out how to get games and software onto it. I'm kind of familiar with the ST in terms of getting the disks, Ultrasatan and such working, and how you have to have hard disk adapted games, but I'm not sure how you do it on the Amiga. Bit of spare IDE cable there. Don't know why I didn't use that. Oh, part of the this little plate there for something, I guess, on the back. What else have we got? Empty bags, springs, and lots of keys. Yeah, so exciting stuff. The old keyboard. Keeping that anyway, just in case, you never know. And I may be generous enough one day if someone says, oh, have you got a plus equals key for an Amiga 1200? I can say, yeah, I've got one of those. But not yet anyway. It takes me a while to let go of things. And with the replacement keycaps as well, you got some slightly different size keys, which were for the Amiga 600, I think, as well. And I did make a few mistakes when I put all this together, using the wrong. I don't know how you can use the wrong enter key, but there you go. You know, it's just kind of fit, you know, in that space. I really understood these two keys here. But yeah, this is really a big one. It's a big learning curve, really, going into an ecosystem that you've never actually experienced before, and working out how to do things, you know, and asking all the stupid questions which Amiga people who are born and bred will just think, you know, F off, you know, stop asking stupid questions, Google it or whatever. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the warm welcome I'll get from the Amiga community with my ignorance on the 1200. It'll be fun anyway. So yeah, the Amiga 1200. I've had my eye on one for many years, but they were quite expensive. 350, 400 pounds maybe, I think is what I was seeing on eBay. And I thought, well, if I just buy one, where's my commitment to actually using it? What can I do to make it something that I would use? And the answer, as per the previous video, was to spend a lot of time and money on it and make it inherently my own. So that, you know, it's a hybrid mixture of stuff, a lot of the stuff being bought new, all in pieces, put it together, and ultimately cost me a lot more than it would have cost me to buy an Amiga 1200 off eBay. But that also means I will be more inclined to use it when the time actually comes, because of that investment. And as I've mentioned a few times, I think it's the most beautiful looking computer of its time. Well, since, you know, home computers were a thing, until computers became beige boxes and had no real identity. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having a play with it, and maybe playing some of the games I used to play on the ST to see what all the fuss was about, especially ones which ran sluggishly on the ST, you know, juddery scrolling and that kind of thing. But yeah, the Amiga 1200 represents the end of my journey, and there is no more after this. There is going to be no more. I'm not going to buy any more. I can pretty much hand on heart say that. Honourable mentions, of course, there's a lot of computers that I don't own. There's one that I did, the Auric 1. I had one of those. I got rid of it because I just didn't warm to it at all, and I just didn't think it was something that provided anything unique or different to the things I already had. And you know, there are plenty of British computers out there which fall into the category of these either wild or wacky, or did pretty well. Things like the Computers Lynx is interesting. The Dragon 32 and 64, you know, that was interesting. That did take quite a hold at the time. But still, you know, space is an issue, and I don't have the space, and I don't have the time to have so many computers. And the more I get, the less time I get with each one as well. So I have to keep it kind of sensible. So that is my entire vintage computer collection.